Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. Marvel, I am the leader of the mutant race. Chapter 41 The House of Ambrosius. After some deliberation, under the strange eyes of the military man, Dan skillfully used his superb bargaining skills to cut off 1/3 of the 9,999 steam armor from the chest, and finally priced it at $6,666 million US. Come to Stark Tower to pick up the goods tomorrow night. After agreeing on a time and place, Yuri and Tony saw off the 3 black braised eggs together, and then returned to the living room again. The Green Goblin was still lying on the ground. The main reason was that as soon as Tony saw the veins on his face subside a little, he immediately asked everyone to put on earplugs and then took out the paralysis device to apply it on him. After 4 times, the Green Goblin was already dead, foaming at the mouth and falling into coma. With the acquiescence of the 3 major violent agencies of the military and police, Norman's disposal power has actually fallen into Yuri's hands. He lightly kicked the Green Goblin's armor. Yuri turned to Tony and said, "Osaben has many useful patents and laboratories. Rebirth Pharmaceutical Company cannot rely solely on rebirth potions. If possible, we can get something worthwhile from him." Tony looked at the Green Goblin on the ground without any sympathy in his eyes. What was originally a good cross-generational product launch conference turned into a mess because of the appearance of this guy. If he hadn't recognized Norman's face after pulling off the mask, he had already sent the opponent to death with a palm cannon. Ever since he personally killed Obadiah, Tony's methods have become more and more fierce. When he went to solve the problems in the Middle East from time to time, he would kill his enemies without hesitation. "I don't think this old guy will obey me. Is there anything you can do, Yuri?" Through the profit of information, he knew that the Osborne family had a certain genetic disease inherited from generation to generation. The reason why Norman transformed into the Green Goblin was due to the injection of some unproven strengthening agent. He raised his finger lightly and drew a ray of the golden life breath penetrated into the Green Goblin's body and probed carefully. He discovered that Norman's genetic chain was slowly disintegrating uncontrollably. This process was not rapid, but judging by this speed, he might die before the 50.00% possibility of certain death came. Mud. Fortunately, life energy can be repaired, but Yuri withdrew the energy after repairing 1/10 of it. Under Tony's fearful gaze, his eyes turned pure white for an instant, but they recovered again after just a few seconds. A brilliant golden color. "Okay, Norman has a genetic disease, and I cured 1/10 of it for him. After waking up, this will become a bargaining chip for you to negotiate with him. In addition, the evil thoughts in his soul are a bit strange. Although I completely wiped them out, but it seems to be able to regenerate infinitely from the main soul, so you should pay attention and it is best to complete all the procedures in a short time." After giving instructions to Tony, he turned around and wanted to leave, because the original Ambrosius family seemed to be quite mysterious. He wanted to understand the secrets as soon as possible, and it would be best to get some improvement in strength. But Tony obviously didn't intend to let him leave just like that. The former took out a videotape and shook it. "The research and development of new elements allows you to participate, but the premise is that you must help me find this new element." Yuri shrugged indifferently, and after Tony inserted the videotape and started playing it, he fast-forwarded to the scene of Future World Blueprint and said, "Jarvis, if you can, please scan this picture. And put it vertically." "Sorry, Yuri." Jarvis explained in a regretful tone, "There is no corresponding equipment installed in the living room. If you want to do this, please move to the laboratory with Tony." Yuri patted Tony, who had already discovered something. As he walked towards the elevator, he said to Jarvis above him, "Then let Tony go by himself. I have something else to do, so I'll take the first step." Jarvis heard this and said, "There are already vehicles waiting at the door. Goodbye, Yuri." The Ambrosius family is located in a small forest on the outskirts of New York City. I remember that Yuri didn't like living here when he was young, because every time night fell, the forest that enveloped the mansion would look particularly eerie. The person in charge of driving was one of Stark's bodyguards. Yuri had not seen the other person in his memory. It seemed that he was an ordinary person who had no role in the main Marvel event. However, the other person's driving skills were good and he was unhappy along the way. It wasn't slow, it was smooth and didn't even make Yuri feel any bumps. Just as the car drove into the only road in the forest, he keenly sensed a faint but real energy fluctuation. This was a new sense created after swallowing up Ginger's ability. In the past, he was like a child in the mother's body. A baby can only passively absorb the cosmic energy floating in the sky and earth, but now he can not only perceive their existence more clearly, but also subjectively mobilize it to his own advantage. This gave him some guesses about the abilities of the Eternals. But now is not the time to think about this. The weak energy fluctuations disappeared briefly, and then Yuri felt that the cosmic energy here seemed to be a little closer to him. They showed pure joy, as if they were welcoming the return of their master. Magic! The car entered the gate, bypassed the stone fountain statue that also had energy fluctuations, and stopped in front of the steps of the mansion. Yuri didn't wait for the driver to get out of the car and took the initiative to open the door. After saying goodbye politely, he opened the door and entered the house with ease. The interior was full of bright lights and splendor. Before I could take a few turns to reminisce about the past, I saw the old butler with grey hair and good spirits walking down the stairs. Yuri naturally showed a friendly smile, walked up to him and shouted, "Adam! Long time no see!" With a smile on his face, old Adam looked up and down at the young man in front of him who he had single-handedly raised and called half a grandson. He patted Yuri on the shoulder and joked, "I thought I would never see you return to the family before I died. It's over." The two walked into the restaurant while chatting. The 4-meter diameter circular revolving table was filled with a variety of dishes. Cheap parents had already started eating before Yuri arrived. "Why did it come so slowly? Your father and I waited for a while but didn't see you coming. We were afraid that the food would get cold, so we ate it directly. See if there is anything else you want to eat. If so, ask Adam to tell the kitchen to do it." As leaders in the catering industry, the lunch of the Ambrosius family certainly shows the extravagance of the capitalist society. Although there are only 3 people, the food on the table is enough for at least 30 people to go around. Yuri ate sloppily for a while, controlling his food intake within the range of ordinary people. He didn't intend to show too much in front of his original parents, unless the other party was as abnormal as him. After eating and drinking, Rob stood up first. He waved to Yuri, who had been prepared. After the latter followed, he walked towards the study in a leisurely manner. His tone became low and mysterious. "Before I learn all the secrets of the family, Yuri, I have a question that I want you to answer. Do you believe in magic?" Chapter 42 Guyi is not worthy. "So, we are descendants of Merlin." Yuri was a little at a loss. In the Marvel universe, Merlin is at the top of the food chain. He controls time and space and is known as the almighty guardian of the universe. "Do you want to play so big? I just randomly found a good-looking guy, how could he be related to a being who can beat up the god team?" At a certain moment, Yuri had the idea of escape immediately. Without him, if Merlin found out that his descendants had been usurped by an inhuman existence, even if he had long transcended reality and ignored the world, as long as a little accident happened it might cause him to be crushed to death. "Yes, we have the noblest blood flowing in our bodies, and we have innate blessings and blessings." Robert pointed to several portraits on the wall of the study room and said, "This blessing blesses us that no matter how many difficulties we encounter, we can still find the vitality of existence. This is why your grandfather participated in the war unscathed, and I am passionate about because of the extreme challenge." Rob carefully took out a certain book on the bookshelf, and then took down the second and third books in a certain order. The books of different thicknesses formed a wonderful formation on the table, and on Luo after Bo placed the last book in a special place, violent energy fluctuations came from the book. Under Yuri's gaze, traces of cosmic energy turned from virtual to real, and finally condensed into a beautiful pendant suspended in mid-air. "This is the Holy Sword and the Holy Shield." Rob's eyes were full of enthusiasm when he looked at the pendant. He recalled, every direct member of the family has an opportunity to be baptized with holy objects after completing the trials passed down from generation to generation. Baptism can make you immune to all diseases and live a long and healthy life, and can also test whether you have magical talent and whether you can accept the inheritance from your great ancestors. "Yuri Ambrosius, my son, please wear the holy object on your chest now." Yuri pondered for a moment, then carefully stretched his hands towards the pendant suspended in mid-air. A simple chain slowly appeared, and the pendant landed on his hand as if it had a self-awareness. A warmth that touched the soul swept through the whole body, and Yuri lost all control over his body in an instant. And countless golden lines representing various abilities of the Eternals emerged one by one. Under the influence of some mysterious force, they slowly merged and merged. Some of the mysterious and complex lines became thicker, while others became thinner or simply disappeared. The chain and the pendant were slowly put around Yuri's neck. Then the pendant, which originally seemed to be welded together, slowly separated from the holy sword and the holy shield. The chain was divided into two and connected to the end of the hilt of the holy sword and the grip of the holy shield. The two holy objects fell on the palm of Yuri's unconsciously raised hand, and then penetrated into Yuri's skin from the real world, leaving marks that looked like tattoos on them. The slightly weird golden double pupils in Yuri's eyes slowly approached and merged, eventually forming new dark golden pupils in the shape of concentric circles. Then this unknown transformation came to an end, and mysterious powers that could not be detected by the naked eye slowly exited the body. The dominance, after success and fame, all returned to the two marks on the palm of the hand and disappeared. Ho ho ho! As if he was about to die of suffocation but suddenly encountered fresh air, Yuri, who regained control of his body, gasped heavily. He raised his hand and looked at the two lifelike tattoos on his palm with apprehension. These two guys dominated the evolution just now, and the incomparable tyrannical force easily took over his dominance over the body. Even if the remaining prestige exuded, it also eclipsed his soul, which few earthlings can match. Forced to the very corner of consciousness. But fortunately, it has no ill intentions toward him, even if Yuri's soul is a ferocious mutant. How are you, my son? Rob could vaguely detect the changes in Yuri, and coupled with everything he had just witnessed, he had reason to suspect that his son had regained the ancestral inheritance that had been lost for 3 generations. Not bad. Yuri tried to mobilize the energy-gathering superpower from Jinj, but found that all the superpowers in his body were fused together, combining into a seed that exuded a strong original aura in his body. Now there is no such thing as Jinj's energy-gathering superpower, Ajax's healing superpower, etc. All the superpowers absorbed by Yuri have been completely transformed under the action of seeds. Became Yuri's superpower. Seeing that he seemed to be feeling himself, Rob asked cautiously, "So, have you learned any magic?" "No." A golden spark appeared out of thin air, and then countless sparks rotated and expanded. Then, under Yuri's gaze, a bald woman wearing a yellow robe and holding a folding fan came out. She looked Yuri up and down, her deep eyes seemed to be able to see through him. No one spoke. In the increasingly solid atmosphere, Gu Yi smiled slightly and actually bent towards Yuri. "Waste. It's an honor to meet you, the inheritor of the holy magician Merlin and the great leader of the mutant race, Mr. Yuri Ambrosius. I am the Earth's contemporary supreme mage, Ancient One." Yuri could feel that the person she was bending over was Merlin, whom she represented, and not the leader of the mutant race who was like a polished commander. She wanted to bow politely in return, but the 2 tattoos on her palms suddenly erupted with piercing heat, apparently telling Yuri that the Ancient One is not worthy of receiving a gift in return. Yuri smiled awkwardly, and was about to explain when he heard Gu Yi speak first. "It doesn't matter, the inheritance of the holy magician Merlin will stay in the alien space of Comitage. If you have time, you can go to Bleecker, Manhattan, New York. Street No. 177A, show them the mark on your palm, and someone will take you to Kamal Taj." As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Yi raised his feet and retreated into the portal. Yuri could see that there seemed to be an endless void, but there was not a single star in sight, only endless darkness that seemed to be able to swallow everything. SHH. The portal closed instantly. Except for Yuri, who could feel the slightest fluctuation in the space, everything else in the study seemed to be exactly the same as a few minutes ago. "So, have you learned any magic?" The exact same voice, the exact same tone, the exact same expression and the exact same movements. Yuri narrowed his eyes. Is Merlin's inheritance so important that it is worth using the time stone? Some thoughts passed quickly, and a smile appeared on Yuri's face again. He gathered an energy ball the size of a green bean at his fingertips, and blasted a medium-deep hole into the hard door of the study. He is really happy, because today he finally solved the only existence on the earth that can pose a fatal threat to him at this stage. Of course, it cannot be said to be solved. Looking at Gu Yi's attitude today, it should be said that he has eliminated possible enemies in the future. Became friends in the same camp in advance. Not only that, from now on, regardless of any abnormal behavior he exhibits, he can blame the cause on Kamal Taj, who lives in seclusion in the mountains. Run fast, can hypnotize, build mechas and heal wounds. It's all because I learned magic. Do not believe? Then go find Master Gu Yi to verify it yourself. Chapter 43 Meteorite. It was already dark after coming out of the Ambrosius family. Yuri refused old Adam's suggestion to send him a car to take him back, and chose to run home on his own legs. Now his abilities have been integrated and unified with the help of the mark on the palm of his hand, but the specific use after the integration still requires him to explore it personally, and he does not plan to go to the New York temple to rush to Comitage in a short time. Learn magic, because Tony called not long ago and said that he had finished the virtual model of the new element. The official manufacturing date will be in the past few days. The expensive suit was torn apart because it couldn't withstand the wind pressure generated by Yuri's running. The rags danced in the wind. Yuri was so annoyed that he tore off all the tops and put on a special suit at a certain jumping moment. Ultra-high elastic wear-resistant set purchased. His speed became faster and faster, and his limbs swung and waved to form a shadow. A golden trail that was more than 10 meters long was left behind him, and it tended to get longer and longer. The divine speed in Macri's hands can drag out a golden light tail that stretches several kilometers, but Yuri can clearly feel that he is making rapid progress. Under the influence of the mutant tribe's powerful evolutionary factors, he believes that he is one step closer to surpassing Macri. The day is not too far away. Yuri suddenly stopped. The power of space disappeared in a flash, eliminating the huge kinetic energy generated during his rapid running. In front of him was an abandoned suburban park, and what made the sound was a black meteorite falling from the sky. Little Spider is in a bad mood today. After being called out by Tony, he had been trembling with fear, fearing that at some point a piece of news like Spider-Man's true identity is Peter Parker would suddenly appear on the big screen on the street, which would cause him to spend the whole day. They were all listless and returned home early after helping some people casually. After learning that Aunt May would not go home after working overtime tonight, he directly put on a hood and swung from the bustling city center to this suburban garden. This was the place where he had his first date with his first girlfriend, Mary, who later fell in love with her. His best friends, Harry and Peter, sent their best wishes. Whenever Peter is unhappy or can't think about it, he will come here alone. Due to the desertion in recent years, it has a sense of tranquility close to the original jungle. No one wants to step on the path full of wild grass and mosquitoes, so no one will bother you at all. But something seems to have gone wrong today. Peter, who was lying on the worn-out rocking chair, suddenly opened his eyes and rolled over to the side. When he raised his head to see the source of the crisis, a meteorite falling from the sky accurately hit the rocking chair he had just been lying on, causing it to shatter countless times. The rocks scattered in all directions, and Peter relied on his strong perception and extraordinary agility to easily avoid all the scorching high-temperature rocks. When all the smoke and dust dissipated, Peter saw the true face of the meteorite. It was a large black stone with a few finger-sized holes scattered on it. Relying on the boldness of an expert, he cautiously approached and squatted down to observe carefully. Crack! A ball of black mucus suddenly spurted out and smeared on Peter's hand, which was blocked in time. It quickly stuck to it as if it were alive, and Peter couldn't shake it off even if he tried his best. What are you doing? The little spider suddenly turned around. A man with an extremely handsome face pushed aside the bushes that were growing wildly. He looked at himself with a strange expression as if he was dancing. The most impressive thing was that the man's eyes turned out to be strange. Dark golden color. The little spider had many thoughts for a moment. The thing stuck to my hand must be the legendary alien creature, right? Should I tell this man that there are aliens here? If I tell him, he will. I also told the police, as the first contact person, I won't be arrested and sectioned for study, right? The more he thought about it, the scarier he became. Peter put his hands behind his back and said, "It's just a meteorite. There's nothing interesting here, sir. I suggest you leave as soon as possible, just like I am doing now." Yuri watched the little spider run away quickly as if it was running away. He shook his head and ignored it. He saw the black mucus sticking to the opponent's palm. If he guessed correctly, it should be a symbiote. The meteorite that smashed into the ground gradually cooled down, and the sound of liquid flowing invariably sounded from the holes on it. After a while, 3 or 4 viscous black fluids fell to the ground. They had a firm goal and rushed towards them, eyes widening. All white. Yuri. It's weak. Symbiotes without a parasitic host are just a puddle of moving mud. The difficulty of controlling their minds is no different than controlling a slightly smarter cat or dog. Yuri raised his hand and pulled out some materials from the dilapidated recliner not far away. This action caused the recliner to be scrapped in pieces. It is estimated that the little spider will not be able to lie on it to peace his mind when he comes here again. Under the control of Yuri, the materials obtained from the recliner deformed and fused, forming spherical containers to put all the symbiotes that crawled out. He shook the simple iron ball in disgust. The reason why he helped Tony so much this is because the improvement of manufacturing capabilities can only draw inferences from analogies, but cannot be made out of thin air. In other words, he will never have the same extreme research and development capabilities as Tony, but as long as he learns the manufacturing process of something, he can be better than anyone else at carrying out modifications and variations at the same level. Come on, come on. Ignoring the meteorite that was still emitting a trace of heat, Yuri put away the containers containing the symbiote and turned away in the direction of the shop. He remembered that there would be a company called Life Company in the future, exploring the symbiote planet in space and bringing the venom back to Earth. In order not to change the plot too much, this meteorite that is useless after taking it should be left here. His keen hearing helped him capture the sound of propellers miles away. He was not interested in whether it was a journalist or a government official. He left immediately after eliminating the traces that he and Little Spider had ever existed here. He is very busy tonight. Not only does he have to complete the steam armor that will be delivered to Black Braised Egg and Gunman tomorrow night before Kate and Vanax come back from fighting crime, he also wants to study the symbiote in the container. I heard that this thing gets stronger when it encounters the strong, and becomes weak when it encounters the weak. It is a group that really only knows how to fight against the power of others. It's just that there might be another consciousness in his mind that he can't accept. So he wants to try to see if he can use his ability to completely erase the souls and consciousness of the symbiotes, turning them into a single biological weapon that is unconscious and autonomously controllable. If he succeeds, he also wants to help the other party multiply the offspring, strive to put on a pair of symbiote battle armor for every tribe member, which is beneficial but harmless. Mutants and symbiote. That must be interesting. Chapter 44 Venomous Spider-Man appears. Go back to Commercial Street. He conveniently destroyed several invisible cameras hidden on the street and pointed at his own shop. These things were no longer a matter of thought. Hey Lu Dan ordered his subordinates to arrange them, and they might be able to upload data in real time, Number 1 said. The angle of view feels like it is being pinched. The first floor of the shop was empty. Ethan left a note on the counter that said, "The meals delivered by Hell's Kitchen are stored in the refrigerator." Yuri walked to the refrigerator and found that there were some of them were not put into the refrigerator for refrigeration. When I opened the refrigerator, I saw that they were almost bursting out. He wondered whether he should do less in Hell's Kitchen. After all, the 5 shacks fought crime every night, and the money they earned from doing so was more than 100, if not 10,000 million. In addition, they had basically learned the skills of human beings. The way of survival is completely self-sufficient, and there is no need to support it by yourself. It took half an hour to fill up my stomach. For mutants with huge appetites, although eating does not take much effort, it really takes a lot of time to be full. It seems that we need to seize the time to research some high-energy foods. Don't waste your precious 24 hours a day on filling your stomach. Bang! A large amount of materials and the first steam armor created by Yuri hit the floor heavily on the second floor. The magic lines engraved on the small shop disappeared in a flash, alleviating the unbearable weight of life on ordinary building materials. I still need to change my house. Yuri shook his head. There have been a lot of things going on recently. But as the saying goes, put on your pants first and then your shoes. Be a grandson first and then a master. You have to eat your meals one bite at a time and do things one by one. The first thing he had to do was to make some improvements to the first generation steam armor, such as integrating various modeled steel materials on the outer shell so that it would not look too obvious and cheap before it was painted in the later stage, such as weakening its capabilities in certain aspects such as speed, lift-off, and endurance prevent him from showing too dazzling attributes, for example, improving the energy absorption array as the core of energy and engraving some things in it that are useless or will cause damage if touched too much. The anti-theft magic that will instantly detonate the entire suit of armor. More than 2 hours later, the 5 shacks who pushed in the door saw 2 war machines that were no worse than the unpainted war machines. They were even better in size and sense of pressure than the second generation steam battle armor. Yuri looked at the time, but it was only 3 in the morning. In the past, the 5 guys would not come back until the sky was slightly bright. Why did you come back so early today? Vanax rushed to the side of the steam armor and looked at the iron can in front of her curiously. Because it looked really good, she couldn't help but bend her fingers and tap it twice. Boss, Night Demon Xia said that Hell's Kitchen has almost been purified into a paradise on Earth by the few of us, and he plans to rest for a few days, and then work hard to find Kingpin's lair and capture him in one fell swoop. Clang! Clang! The unactivated steam battle armor was just a pile of scraps of broken copper and iron. How could it withstand the light blow from Vanax, the veteran of the mutant race? 2 potholes the size of a baby's fist immediately appeared in it. On the originally smooth surface of the armor, when Vanax looked at Yuri's elongated face, he knew that tonight he would have to go through another experience of close at hand but out of reach and snatch it but find that you can't beat it again tonight. What a tragic journey. Go away. Kate crossed her arms and looked at the stupid bird that had fled, feeling deeply grateful in her heart. She had a great teammate who would never let go of her chain in battle and a pig opponent who was absolutely not smart when fighting for mating rights. Moreover, this when both of them were named Vanax, their lives were so happy and beautiful. During the final debugging to confirm that everything was correct, Yuri casually smoothed the 2 holes made by Vanax, put them into the black ball, and then went upstairs with Kate. After taking a few steps, he suddenly noticed something was wrong behind me, so I turned around and met 3 hungry eyes. Boss, when can we go to the North Pole? The 3 of us are almost suffocated. That's right, boss, you have to find us a girlfriend quickly. Yuri was speechless. He and his clansmen had just solved the problem of eating, and then he felt full, warm, and lustful. But this was indeed a problem. He thought for a while and said, keep it in for another week, and we will leave in a week. Go to the North Pole, you can do whatever you want when the time comes, as long as you have the ability, and as long as there are no more than 10, I will give you as many as I find. After Shaq and the others happily agreed, he continued to walk to the 3rd floor. Immediately afterwards there was a burst of ups and downs, and in the middle came a stupid bird who really couldn't stand it, and then there was another ups and downs. Silent all night. But the little spider from Queens said that he had a lot to say. The pool of black mucus on his hands not only couldn't be shaken off, but also continued to seep into his body. Even if he stretched the muscle membrane to the tightest, it could not stop its progress. Isn't this some kind of alien-like parasite? Is he going to eat all my internal organs right away and then crawl out of my belly? Oh my god, it would be too bad if Aunt May saw me die tragically. Most of the black mucus had penetrated, and Peter's thoughts began to become confused. Crazy but not evil thoughts appeared one after another, making his nerves more and more fragile. Finally, he gave up resistance and cried on the pillow. In any case, he is just a child who suddenly has superpowers. Faced with the great horror between life and death, even an old man who has lived a lifetime may not be able to understand it, let alone a child who has not experienced society. As for the polished little spider, although he deceived himself and imagined all of this, the wall clock on the wall was ticking, symbolizing the passage of time. I don't know how long it had passed, but Peter's crying gradually became quieter. He suddenly jumped up from the bed, and his strong movements allowed him to land steadily on the ground. Why are you crying? Isn't this a good life? But I definitely can't last too long. I have to do something meaningful before I die, do whatever I want and be unscrupulous. Aunt May. Aunt May's work is really tiring. The key is that she can't make much money. It's all the fault of Aunt May's boss, I can kill him. No, 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 murder is really terrible. I'd better get some money to make Aunt May spend the rest of her life comfortably, so that she can take care of herself even if I die. Robbing a bank. You can make a lot of money by robbing a bank. No. Then Aunt May will be caught. I have to think of other ways. The poor symbiote. Because Peter's body and soul are too powerful, it cannot control the body at all. It can only mobilize the evil thoughts in the little spider's heart, prompting him to fall step by step, but the key is that there are few evil thoughts in Peter's body. It's so pitiful that the symbiote can't find anything to seduce the host in this heart full of sunshine. Diddy. The phone on the table suddenly rang. After Peter answered the call, Sheriff George's voice came from it. I need your help, kid. The location is an overpass. There is a large-scale drug deal going on here. The enemy has a lot of firepower, and I need your help to attract their attention. Drug dealing? There must be a lot of cash in there. With a thought in Peter's mind, the black and white venom spider suit instantly covered his body. Cool. I'm going right now. After hanging up the phone, the venomous spider turned over and jumped out of the window. Chapter 45 You shouldn't be like this. Spider threads shot out from the transmitter on the wrist, and they were firmly adhered to the rows of high-rise buildings in New York City, leading the little spiders to jump through the night. The symbiote did increase the little spider's combat power a lot. He had to adapt for a long time before he could master the power in his body that was several times greater than before. The spider silk, which was as tough as steel wire, also broke several times under the huge force. Just when he was about to continue adapting like this, the symbiote that turned the suit into black and white suddenly began to fluctuate. The little spider raised his wrist thoughtfully, and finger-thick sticks of mucus shot out like spider silk. Wow! Peter tugged tentatively. The shared body spider silk was several times stronger than the special spider silk he had developed himself in terms of feel, convenience, toughness, strength, and quantity. It could completely withstand his current strength. At this point, he no longer hesitated, grabbed the symbiote spider silk with both hands and jumped off the top floor of a certain building with a whoosh. Yes, that's it. I have great power and I can do whatever I want. Yes, you can do whatever you want. I want to kill everyone and eat everyone's brains. No, no, no. That's terrible. I just wanted to get some money for Aunt May. Why did I have the urge to eat other people's brains again? Don't think so much, my main task now is to grab some cash from the drug dealer. The bridge is here. Chief. Is the other party really a drug dealer? Why do I feel more like an arms dealer? It's not just you. Keep the defensive formation. I guess this may be related to the purge of Hell's Kitchen. Jin cannot accept that his lair has turned into a paradise on earth. This batch of goods may contain guns and ammunition that he provided for his men. Damn city vigilantes! The deputy police chief next to George hammered the police car with the broken window. He said bitterly, on the surface, they are doing chivalry and punishing evil and promoting good, but they have no idea that this behavior itself is a kind of person who despises laws and commits evil. So what if they have superhuman strength? So what if they can fly over walls and climb over walls? Their appearance is more of an obstacle to the normal operations of the police and creates unnecessary trouble and obstacles for us. Damn city vigilantes! George leaned behind the car and listened silently, saying nothing. He admitted that the deputy chief's words made sense, because he thought so at first, but no matter what, city vigilantes were people with righteous hearts. It was precisely when he discovered this that he developed the little spider Peter Parker into your own informant. In his opinion, vigilantes with extraordinary abilities are like a gun in the hands of the enemy on the opposite side. The gun has no malicious intent on the police themselves, but their abilities are just used in the wrong place. George wants to the only thing is to have the vigilantes, a group of highly lethal guns, in their own hands. Even if they cannot achieve 100% control, they can at least make them comply with the established rules of the police. It's like Spider-Man arriving at the scene from afar with his webbing. Look at him, be more obedient. After seeing the little spider landing in a standard superhero landing posture, George let out a long breath. The reason why he ordered to maintain a defensive formation was not because the police could not deal with the villains on the opposite side, but because he wanted to take this opportunity, improve the status of the special group of vigilantes in the eyes of the police, so that the vast majority of police no longer regard them as enemies, but as a powerful support that can reduce casualties of comrades in arms. In this way, he can implement a plan in the plan more smoothly. Wow! There are so many people, I want to eat them all. No, no, no. I'm here to steal money, robbing the rich and giving to the poor. How could I have such a terrible idea of cannibalism? Grab the money. Steal the money. Kill the person first, and then take the money away. I won't kill anyone. At this moment, a group of police officers hiding behind police cars and drug dealers who continued to suppress fire also noticed the uninvited guest who suddenly appeared on the overhead highway. Many police officers recognized Spider-Man, but at the same time they were suspicious of him. Why did his suit turn black? But the drug dealers who are close to madness will not think about this. It doesn't matter whether you are Spider-Man or a lizard, as long as you are in the way, I will give you a shuttle first. Da-da-da. Ding 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 dong. Little Spider was keenly aware of the danger before the drug dealer shot at him. He jumped up and down flexibly on the viaduct, shifting left and right, and all the bullets that hit him were far behind him. At the same time, under the constant and subtle influence of the symbiote, a surge of nameless anger quickly spread in his heart with the potential of starting a prairie fire. Freedom to strike back. Seeing that most of the drug dealer's firepower was attracted by Spider-Man, George decisively picked up the walkie-talkie on his waist and gave the order to attack. The role of the vigilante was only to reduce unnecessary casualties of the police officers. He was worthy of being the first person selected by him. Peter's mission has been successfully completed, and the rest can be left to the heroic New York police. On the ever-changing battlefield, anything can happen. A bullet fired by an unknown person mistakenly hit the support of the bridge. After an incomparable deflection, it not only failed to hit any target among the police and drug dealers, but accurately hit the target while trying to suppress the nameless rage. The face of the little spider who failed to sense the danger in time. The bullet slowly penetrated into the rapidly surging black mucus, but in the blink of an eye, the yellow bullet was sent out intact. Spider-Man slowly turned his head and clearly saw countless bullets whizzing towards him, but at this moment, his heart was already filled with anger, and his only reason was suppressed in his heart. For the first time, the consciousness of the symbiote was suppressed. Peter Parker has obtained control over this extraordinary body. What a wonderful feeling, Peter! Just see how I use this power. Clap clap clap! The scorching bullets whirled into the black spider suit, but they were all squeezed out in less than a breath. A huge ferocious smile opened on the face of the symbiote Spider-Man, and 5 thick spider silks came from the fingers of his right hand. The tip shot out and wrapped tightly around one of the steel pillars supporting the bridge. Smash you to death! Accompanied by a deafening sound of steel tearing apart, the alloy pillar as thick as 2 people hugging each other was torn off. The 5 symbiote spider threads entangled and blended with each other, and the surging force dragged the giant thing towards the sky. A group of gun-toting drug dealers with stunned expressions on their faces. Boom! 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 All the police officers forgot to shoot. They just stared dumbfounded at the steel bridge pillar being smashed into the bridge deck again and again, with blood and flesh flying everywhere, and stumps everywhere. A few young police officers who had just started to work with guns couldn't help but bend over and vomited. Money, money! The symbiote Spider-Man acted as if there was no one around. He waved his black slime tentacles and searched for what the body wanted in the vehicle that had long since been turned into pieces. The bridge pillars still fell on the bridge one after another, and the symbiote was trying its best to reach the bridge. Roaring deep in his heart, the helpless and furious Peter Parker showed his power. A trace of cracks spread rapidly in all directions, and the flat bridge deck began to collapse in large pieces. Upon seeing this, George immediately told the police officers to evacuate immediately. After being dragged into the car by the deputy police chief, he still stared at the excited Spider-Man holding the cash box with complicated eyes. Peter, you shouldn't be like this. Chapter 46. Yuri, who got up early, came to the first floor. Ethan just sat at the counter. He spread out the newspaper and smoothed the folds. His eyes behind the glasses slightly exposed the top edge of the newspaper. He glanced at Yuri, who came over and greeted politely, "Morning, boss, it's only 7 o'clock. More, you don't usually get up so early." "Morning, Ethan." Yuri took out his own breakfast from the refrigerator, heated it briefly, put it aside and ate it. While eating, he also reviewed the newly revised Arctic journey plan of the 5 shacks. After consuming most of the breakfast, Yuri, who was reading the newspaper behind the counter, suddenly let out an exclamation. Yuri put down the plan book, stuck his head out and asked him what happened. "Boss, you will never believe it. Spider-Man, the superhero known as New Yorker's good neighbor, broke into the scene of the police and robbers fighting last night. Not only did he kill all the gangsters in an extremely cruel way, killing him, and taking away the stolen money that the other party used to trade drugs, that's not a big deal. The overpass at the scene of the battle collapsed after being wreaked havoc by Spider-Man." Ethan handed the newspaper to Yuri, pointed to a line of text on it and said, "The newspaper said that everyone now doubts the justice of the vigilantes' actions and denies the legality of the vigilantes' actions. The police and the government will even Spider-Man is defined as a terrifying criminal and calls on everyone to unite to resist all their actions." "Boss." Ethan glanced at the ceiling without leaving a trace. He approached Yuri and asked cautiously, "Should Shaq and the others' night operations be temporarily suspended for a few days?" Yuri read the entire newspaper carefully, and his eyes stayed for a long time on a large picture printed in special colors. It showed the scene of the official symbiote Spider-Man crazily smashing a bridge with a money box, and the black and white spider suit and image. The jet black tentacles that looked like slime made people couldn't help but sigh. Blackening is 3 times stronger. Returning the newspaper to Ethan, Yuri patted his shoulder and comforted him, "Thank you very much for your concern for Shaq and the others, Ethan. In fact, their night activities have come to an end. You can see Hell's Kitchen. Such earth-shaking changes indicate that the main purpose of the night operation has been achieved." Ethan nodded, Thinking of the 5 people who had become closer and closer to normal people in recent days, he said with considerable approval, "Indeed, Shaq and the others have changed a lot recently, which shows that the night operations are very effective." "What's wrong with Shaq and the others?" Yuri glanced at Ethan strangely, and under the puzzled gaze of the other party, he said, "The main purpose of what I said is to protect your personal safety. You are now a representative director of Stark Industries. Although the danger in Hell's Kitchen has been minimized, there may be some fools and lunatics who come out from nowhere, either to ask for money, or to take revenge, shoot a bullet at you with a gun. You know, you are the weakest one under my command, and I don't like the people who follow me to die for various reasons." "Wow!" Ethan rolled up the newspaper and was very moved. He raised the glasses on the bridge of his nose and said while walking to the counter, "I don't know what good things I did in my previous life to become your employee." Yuri chuckled, "Maybe it was you who saved Marvel's own father, Tony Stark, with your life countless times in the parallel world." In the transparent glass cover, a pool of black and shiny mucus was rushing left and right, trying to find a chance to escape, but how could the observation device built by Yuri himself make it possible? Dark golden eyes instantly turning white, the majestic soul energy passed through the glass and headed towards the unaware symbiote. In the past, the symbionts tried to seize the consciousness of the host, but today it can be regarded as a turn of events. After some inconspicuous resistance, the pool of black slime in the glass cover was completely controlled by Yuri. He raised his middle finger and asked for rewards. After playing with it for a while, he started attempt to erase the tiny soul and consciousness of the symbiote. Human consciousness mainly exists in the brain. Individuals with extraordinary talents may also imprint their thoughts on other organs. Such people generally do not realize their own uniqueness. They are often robbed or actively donated. Only after the heart is transplanted can one realize this unique talent from the person whose organ has been transplanted. So for example, after going to the hospital for a blood transfusion, he suddenly likes a man, or a person with kidney failure suddenly admires a thief after receiving a kidney transplant. Wait, they are all extremely normal existences. The human soul mainly exists in the pineal gland between the eyebrows. This organ of a very small number of people can break through the many barriers set by the Creator. As long as you tear a hole, no matter how small it is, you will have the ability to absorb energy and learn supernatural abilities. Talent and qualifications. Mutants are different. Their consciousness and soul are evenly distributed in various parts of the body. If one is damaged, they will all be damaged, and if one is prosperous, they will be prosperous. They are not afraid of being injured because they can recover naturally. To Yuri's surprise, the symbiote in the glass cover turned out to be the same as the mutants, with soul and consciousness integrated into one, evenly distributed in various parts of the entire pool of mucus. Is this a failed experiment before the Celestials created the mutant race? The symbiote god Nar in the memory appeared before the Celestial group, but the symbiote was not. All symbiotes were bred from the Black Death sword that was forged by Nar after killing a member of the Celestials and using his blood to forge it. Maybe there was no massacre at all, or maybe there was no such thing as a blood-forged sword. Is there a possibility that Nar and the Celestial group jointly created the symbiosis, a life population? No one could respond. Yuri immediately stopped thinking about it. His goal now was to annihilate the consciousness of this symbiote. Instead of thinking about the future that would take him an unknown amount of time to arrive, it was better to focus on the present that was within reach. The spiritual energy squeezed into the symbiote without any reservation, surrounding its small and weak consciousness and soul at a 10-to-1 ratio, and then revealed its murderous intentions. Without any suspense, it disinfected the turtle in the urn who resisted desperately but to no avail. After carefully feeling it to make sure nothing was missing, Yuri put a finger on the glass cover. The hard but fragile glass split a hole like water, and the symbiont, which was so black and glowing, wrapped around it under Yuri's control. My fingers are sometimes as hard as steel, sometimes as soft as fingers. Wow wow! With the sound of water flowing, the symbiote spread and expanded rapidly in a manner that violated scientific laws, transforming from a pool of fist-sized black slime into a matte black giant that enveloped Yuri's entire body. Yuri can clearly feel the symbiote's pervasiveness: skin, muscles, bones, tendons, cells, genes. The symbiote absorbs cosmic energy, condenses it into countless undetectable particles, and integrates into the host's body, helping the host to survive at a higher rate. Develop original genes to help the host withstand various backlashes that may harm the body. After a few seconds, the black fluid that enveloped Yuri stopped changing. A total of 5 eyes suddenly opened, 1 between the eyebrows and 4 under the eyebrows. The dark golden pupils looked at the large standing mirror that had been prepared for a moment on the opposite side. It was pitch black. Suddenly a gash opened on his face, revealing a set of terrifying white teeth inside. Being a human is so tiring. No need to pretend anymore. Chapter 47 Selling Armor. That night, in order to show off his agility, the belated black-braced Dan grabbed a rope thrown from the helicopter and slid to the rooftop of Stark Tower. Following him, sliding down, was a man with a ferocious face. A well-dressed man who looks inexplicably like a villain. Yuri searched his memory for a while and learned his code name, Crossbones. An inexplicable smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The person Nick Fury most wanted to bring to trial the steam armor was definitely not Crossbones, but since the latter can stand here, it is obvious that he has reached something secretly with the smuggler Alexander Pierce. It's a shady transaction, because the principle of black braised eggs is that you may make a profit no matter what, but I will never lose. The guests have all arrived. Please allow me to briefly introduce the 2 steel giants in front of you. Black-braced Dan and the soldier looked at each other and listened to Yuri's speech without saying a word. Unlike Tony's mechanical prosthesis, my steam armor uses a special matrix as the basis for energy supply and operation. The armor itself is made of ordinary steel and is slightly fragile when it is not activated, but once the driver activates the armor, its embedded special matrix will provide the armor with unparalleled defense and attack power. It has ample storage space for ammunition and weapons. You can set it up as needed and leave it to me to modify it. The bare metal also has powerful power. After special matrix transformation, the steam armor can overturn a car at full load. The tank, no matter what kind of enemy you two want to use it to deal with, I believe it will be able to enter the uninhabited territory. The armor can be charged automatically. The charging time is about 24 hours. After charging, it can support the normal state for 1 hour, the high load state for half an hour, and the full load state for 5 minutes. When the energy is exhausted, the matrix will fail, so please do pay attention to your timing. Yuri's last sentence was to Crossbones and the unknown soldier brought by the military man. The expressions of the 2 men were obviously nervous and apprehensive. It seemed that they couldn't wait to get into the steam armor and experience it. But obviously, it doesn't count if they're thinking about it. The black marinated egg pondered for a moment, stared at Yuri with one eye and asked, I want to know what exactly is the special matrix you're talking about. No comment. Yuri didn't want to waste words at all, so he had the patience to introduce it to them, which was already his duty. Now Hyalodon wanted to get to the bottom of it, and it was clear that he was eyeing the special matrix on the armor. Hey Dan couldn't help but frown when he heard such a straightforward rejection. He put his hands behind his back and raised his head. Looked at Yuri and threatened, if you can't figure this out, you are irresponsible for the life of the armor pilot. It's absolutely unacceptable to accept such a armor that can't even figure out how it works. Then please go back to where you came from. Yuri glanced at the military man who was watching on the wall, stared at the black braised egg and said coldly, we all know why each other is standing here, don't use coercion and inducement for me, S.H.I.E.L.D. won't buy it, no it means that everyone does not buy it, including the military, police, FBI, CBI, IRS. Even if these violent departments in the United States do not buy it, I can still sell the steam armor overseas. In this transaction, I am God. Love to buy, don't buy. Tony, who was watching the show from a distance, finally couldn't help but come over. He was never worried about whether something would happen to Yuri. What he was worried about was that if Yuri was really angry, what would happen to the black braised egg and the soldier opposite him? He won't be punched to death. In order to prevent this kind of human tragedy from happening in Stark Tower, he had no choice but to come over and smooth things over. Okay, stop making trouble, Fury, don't you just want to ensure the safety of the driver? Tony, will vouch for my personality, Yuri. The steam armor is definitely the safest weapon in the world. The soldier who was watching on the wall also spoke at the right time. He patted the big soldier beside him and said, as an agent, Fury is a bit timid as a professional habit. Come on, Tom, let them see the bravery of soldiers. Yes sir. The crowd was either openly mocking or sarcastic. Hey Braised Egg was so angry that he almost turned around and left, but the Crossbones beside him suddenly whispered in his ear, anyway, take the armor back first, the technology he is unwilling to disclose, at worst we can crack it ourselves. Fury's one eye flashed with an inexplicable light. He suppressed the anger in his heart and cursed fuck in a low voice. At this moment, under the guidance of Yuri, the leader of the military man has already entered the steam armor. With a pleasant sound of gears snapping and bearings rotating, the armor is completely closed. After a while, the eyes of the visor representing startup complete it lit up. The huge steam armor moved its limbs flexibly. Under the command of the soldier, Big Soldier Tom drove it to perform a series of actions such as push UPS, handstands, backflips, etc. The soldier even pulled out the pistol from his waist, and with different expressions on their faces, everyone fired all the bullets into the steam armor's eyes without hesitation. There is no doubt that except for the driver Tom, who was unable to face his fear and took a step back, the eyes of the visor, which seemed to be the most fragile, failed to leave even a white mark. The soldier stuffed the slightly hot pistol into his waist, nodded with satisfaction and said, "What about flight mode? I remember you said he can fly." Yuri knocked on the shell of the armor and said to Tom, who was still frightened inside, "Imagine that you can fly, and you can fly. Imagine." The words that came out of the armor were muffled, and after passing through the layers, one could only vaguely make out that it was Tom's voice. "Do you wave your wings like a bird?" As he spoke, he also made a few very vivid movements. With the black line on the soldier's face, he asked doubtfully, "I can't fly, I can't be like a bird." "Then try to be like Superman." Yuri said, "Place your palms down, solace of your feet and shoulders, raise your head and chest, and look up at the sky." Listening to the excited shouts from the armor that was slowly rising into the sky, Yuri looked at each other with the military man with a black face. The latter was thinking about how to deal with the guy in the sky who had embarrassed him after returning, while the latter stretched out his hand. One hand rubbed its thumb and index finger several times in front of the former. $6,666 million US, pay with one hand, and deliver with one hand. Hey Lu Dan finally bought the steam armor, but he and Jun Lao didn't move. The latter not only paid the money neatly, but also promised to bring more orders to Yuri in the near future. Luodan picked up his armor and left. Before rolling down the window, he stuck his head out and said nervously to Yuri, "We will make the special no longer exist." Yuri, who originally wanted to warn them not to dismantle without permission and cause an experimental accident, calmly shut his mouth and made his own mistakes. People who are used to committing suicide will sooner or later die in their own hands. Just when he was about to ask Tony when he was going to create new elements, he looked up and suddenly caught a glimpse of a black and white figure adhering to the glass exterior wall of Stark Tower. He then jumped up and fell into the brightly lit room. The rooftop disappeared. Symbiote Spider-Man. Yuri raised his eyebrows and opened the exclusive elevator leading directly to the top floor with an inexplicable expression. Chapter 48, I owe enough anyway. Stop. Stop. At this moment, the little spider has almost completely lost control of his body. Even if he struggles desperately, he can only take away control of his body for a few seconds. He watched helplessly as he wreaked havoc on the overpass, watched as he went crazy carrying cash boxes between high-rise buildings, watched himself break in through the window, and spilled all the stolen money used by drug dealers on Aunt May. Room, watching myself flying over the walls, arriving at the private mansion on the top floor of Stark Tower. Why do you want me to stop? Everything I do is for you, okay? The symbiote Spider-Man had just smashed through the glass door of the mansion on the top floor, and was about to rush in to kill and eat Tony Stark, but was dragged back by the little spider who was struggling to resist deep in his consciousness. The alarm bell rang loudly in the mansion. Tony, who was busy setting up the new element production room in the laboratory, frowned and waved his hand to let the artificial intelligence Jarvis show the cause of the alarm to him through a screen projection, the characters on the screen. Wearing a black and white spider suit, the strange thing is that the suit squirms strangely from time to time. His behavior was even more outrageous. The broken glass everywhere clearly proved that he was the culprit who wanted to break into the penthouse and cause an alarm. But what was incomprehensible was that this guy who looked like Spider-Man sometimes raised his leg, taking steps, sometimes retracting his legs and retreating. If his movements weren't different every time, Tony would have suspected that the monitor was stuck. It is recommended to go to the lift platform and wear the Mark armor, sir. Jarvis's voice suddenly sounded. After data analysis, the frequency of the individual's forward steps is gradually increasing, and the backward movement is gradually decreasing. I have accelerated the ascent speed of Mr. Yuri's elevator, but in order to ensure your personal safety is absolutely guaranteed, so it's best to put on your battle armor, sir. Tony waved his hand to turn off the virtual projection screen, and ran towards the lift platform where Mark's armor was. The black Spider-Man in the surveillance video had no move to retreat at all, only the frequent lags while striding forward. Let people know that something inside him is still fighting unremittingly. Boom! Tony Stark, I'm going to kill you. In the face of the tyrannical power of the symbiote Spider-Man, the penthouse made of special building materials was like paper. Walls were smashed by fists, kicked by legs, and smashed by heads. Tony felt like he was being beaten. The street rat, which was chased and beaten by people, scurried around under the guidance of Jarvis, and finally rushed into the lift where the Mark armor that was ready to be worn was stored. Tony strode towards the armor, but because he didn't pay attention to the terrain under his feet, he fell hard on the angular steps. The movement behind him was getting closer and closer. He ignored the excruciating pain in his body and struggled to stand up. Staggering towards Mark IV, who was waiting for him quietly. Turning around, spreading his arms, the chest armor, runes, leg armor began to close and seal quickly, but in just a few seconds, the symbiote Spider-Man who caused a huge movement was also close in front of him. Tony's visor hadn't fallen yet. He could clearly see the opponent's big arm of non-Newtonian fluid waving wantonly. The walls, door frames, floors, everything was so vulnerable. He could see that the opponent was about 10 meters away. He punched himself, and before he had time to wonder, streaks of black mucus rapidly proliferated and merged in a manner that violated the law of conservation of matter, forming a sharp cone. The tip of the cone was facing Tony Stark, who had finally taken off his visor. Done. Even if Tony reacted as soon as he successfully put on the suit, how could his reaction speed with that of an ordinary human be comparable to that of a mutant youth and an alien visitor? The gold and red Mark IV smashed into the auxiliary mechanical arm behind him and smashed into the recently repaired and strengthened tempered glass. But before he could fly out, he was pulled back by the tapered spider silk. Sir, the plastron is damaged by 70.00%, and it has formed irreversible compressive deformation. Jarvis's voice rang in Mark IV's helmet, but Tony's face turned red and purple, and he just spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with unknown fragments, unable to say a word. Peter, as long as we kill him together, no one will know Spider-Man's true identity anymore. A bloody and crazy voice sounded from the black and white spider suit, and a sharp cone wrapped around his fist, and he was about to see it. He had to plunge into Mark's armor, which was tightly bound by streaks of black mucus. But at this moment, an untimely sound of footsteps sounded from behind the symbiote Spider-Man. Yuri walked calmly and said, "Do you remember me, little Spider-Man? Not only do I know who you are, I also know who you are. Who do you like? Who are you?" The symbiote Spider-Man threw Tony aside, stood up, and looked down at the man with dark golden pupils in front of him. His keen biological senses told him that there was a huge threat hidden under the man's sunny and handsome appearance. "Who am I?" Yuri chuckled. As he got closer, black and shiny non-Newtonian fluids quickly covered his entire body. In front of the symbiote Spider-Man, the slightly thin figure quickly grew taller and swelled, and a tyrannical aura also appeared. It exploded in an instant. 5 eyes suddenly opened, and a stream of light that seemed to have substance flashed past. Yuri opened his mouth and smiled, "You will know when you die." Boom! Just the collision of fists caused the air wave to raise a large amount of dust. The symbiote Spider-Man was knocked away like a cannonball, but was immediately grabbed and pulled back by the giant black hand thrown out by Yuri. The body-supplying Spider-Man was held by Yuri, and he received a solid uppercut. The back of his head broke the shoulder blade, but in the blink of an eye, this terrifying fatal injury was restored to its original state. It pulled itself out of the ceiling, jumped far away and screamed at Yuri, "This is impossible. Why are you stronger than me? It sounds like you are invincible." Yuri mocked, and used his space ability to appear directly behind the symbiote Spider-Man. His raised fist condensed into a huge pointed cone, and in the next moment, it pierced the symbiote Spider-Man's spine and stabbed it violently. Broke his heart. The tip of the cone protruding from the body disintegrated into several ropes, tightly binding the symbiote spider that was trying to escape. Yuri faced Mark IV, who was lying motionless in the corner, and asked as he approached, "Is he dead? If not, shoot the sonic cannon on him." "Mr. Uri." Jarvis's voice came from under the visor. Tony's ribs were completely broken and pierced into his internal organs. "He is now in a coma. For the sake of his life safety, I cannot control Mark IV to make any movements. You owe me another one, Tony." A golden life energy penetrated the severely deformed armor and penetrated into the body of Tony, who was lying on the ground. In just one breath, all the injuries were restored, and Tony's voice came out from under the armor, "I understand. Anyway, I owe you enough, can you help me open the plastron? It is almost squeezing my belly into a piece of paper, just think that I owe you one more time, okay?" Yuri curled his lips, and a jet of black non-Newtonian fluid penetrated through the cracks in the armor. Under the control of the master, it easily tore open the red gold belly armor that was strong enough to carry missiles. Looking at Tony jumping up from the ground, he said nonchalantly, "As you said, I owe enough anyway. It's all here. I admit that my writing is terrible, but as of the 23rd, I will have updated more than 30 words for 3,000 consecutive days. More people can invest in it. It takes 10 minutes and costs 10 coins. Everyone who gets 32 points will definitely not lose money." Chapter 49. A message. Sonic cannon ready. Tony raised his two arms and aimed at the symbiote Spider-Man, whose limbs were torn apart by 5 thick ropes and fixed in the air like a big letter. He glanced at Yuri beside him and said with some discomfort, "Are you sure that nothing will happen to you? Because the thing on your body seems to be related to it." "Do not worry." Yuri patted Tony on the shoulder and said confidently, "They are indeed relatives, but this one on me has been modified." "Okay." Tony glanced at the hand on his shoulder in confusion, and turned on the sonic cannon at a huge target that did not require auxiliary aiming. "No. No. Stop it." The moment it was touched by the sound wave that could be detected by the naked eye, huge fluctuations occurred on the black and white suit of the symbiote Spider-Man. Each of the tiny slime tentacles struggled to be squeezed out, revealing the red and blue original suit inside. A huge, ferocious head emerged from the little spider's chest. It stared at Yuri and asked in disbelief, "Why are you okay? Why aren't you afraid of these damn sound waves? Increase the power." Yuri turned to Tony and said, "Until it becomes speechless." Tony shrugged rather unhappily. This feeling of being ordered but having to accept it was really terrible. "Do not stop. I beg you." The symbiont on the little spider's body is getting smaller and smaller, and the huge head is now only the size of a fist. At this moment, Peter finally regained control of his body. While enduring the sonic attacks that made no distinction between friend and foe, he watched Tony extremely the tough guy yelled, "Try harder. It's not enough. Shut up for me. Forget it, Yuri, after all, I owe too much, but you, a little spider who broke in and tried to kill me, came to order me, what's going on?" While Tony frantically increased the power of the sonic cannon, he approached the black slime that was shrinking into a ball and was about to break away from the little spider to reduce the attack range and increase the damage effect. Crack! The fist-sized symbiote finally broke away from its host. Its body as weak as a slug and its unstable soul were completely exposed to the endless sound wave attacks. Upon seeing this, Yuri immediately put down the little spider and used his own symbiote to make the container saved it. Okay, if you drive for a while, your penthouse will be completely destroyed." After Tony heard this, he decisively turned off the sonic cannon on his arm. He looked around, and all he could see were ruins and dust. He was not distressed at all, but he was mainly worried about how to deal with the furious Pepper later. "Explain the reason for this." "I'm sorry, Mr. Stark." When the little spider saw Tony sitting on the ground with his head in his hands, he thought he was worried about the funds to rebuild the mansion. In order to show his sincerity and apology, he hesitated and took off his hood, revealing a sad face underneath. "Face, if possible, I can work part-time to help you pay back the money, but it may take a long time." It turns out to be Brother Holland. Yuri took back his symbiote, sucked in the broken glass on the ground and gathered them into a hollow glass ball the size of a fist. After stuffing the symbiote that was parasitic on Spider-Man into it and sealing it, he took a look at the large number of police cars that had gathered. On the street with the fire truck, he said goodbye to Tony decisively, "There are many people coming down below, I will go first. Remember not to be too harsh on him. In this terrorist attack against you, he is just a bystander." The voice. Just as it fell, a faint blue light wave flashed through, and Yuri disappeared instantly. Tony pondered on the ground for a long time, but in the end he couldn't come up with a solution. He sighed and glanced at the guilty little spider, whose young face was filled with anxiety about the unknown punishment. "It's none of your business." Tony stood up and spread his hands. The Mark IV, which was missing its plastron, split from the middle. He walked out of it and subconsciously rubbed his intact ribs and waist that could not feel any pain. Seeing what the little spider was about to say, he simply waved his hand and interrupted, "Don't even think about working part-time. Money, kid, I'm not short of that, money you may never make in your lifetime." He spread his hands and smiled rather self-deprecatingly, "This may be my only superpower." The little spider took a few steps closer at a loss. "I am very smart, I mean I am smarter than ordinary people. I can tell you the special spider silk formula I have developed, which can be exchanged for a lot of money. I can also learn, when I have more knowledge, I can work for you to pay back the money." Tony smiled and listened patiently to his incoherent self-worth introduction. It was only when the little spider couldn't say a word anymore that he spoke seriously, "Those are things for the future, Peter. I think you are now what you have to do is go home and explain to your Aunt May why the money box snatched by Spider-Man Noir appeared in your bedroom if you didn't deposit the money in the bank." Holy shines! Little Spider suddenly remembered that he had spilled all the money in Aunt May's bedroom, and his face instantly wrinkled into a bitter melon. Tony looked at him and asked gloatingly, "Did I guess it right?" The little spider raised his head and said, "It's worse than that, Mr. Stark, I have to go back. I'm extremely sorry for the harm I caused today. Please don't worry, I will definitely find an opportunity to repay you." After saying that, he stretched out his hand and pulled out a piece of white spider silk, which stuck to the building opposite. After running for a few steps, he jumped up suddenly and dragged the silk out of Tony's sight. Ancestral Handicraft Shop. Yuri jumped down from the ceiling of the third floor that automatically cracked, and happened to face Silly Bird and Silly Cat who had just walked out of the bathroom. The former threw himself into Yuri's arms with a cry, while the latter picked up Silly Bird calmly. The bath towel fell on the floor, and after giving Yuri a wink, he lay down on the bed with his buttocks twisted. "Boss, it's rare for you to come back so early. How about the three of us play together today?" Silly Bird's eyes were blurry, and she had obviously begun to enter the plot, but Yuri mercilessly threw her on the bed, straightened her clothes and said ruthlessly, "I still have some things to do, and it may take a long time. It may be very short, so you should go to sleep first, I will wake you up when I finish my work." After closing the bedroom door, he placed the glass ball containing the symbiote that had once parasitized Spider-Man on the simple workbench. His eyes turned completely white, and he activated his mental abilities to arbitrarily break into the symbiote's body. Control the body, read memory, extract information. 10 seconds later, Yuri withdrew his spiritual energy inexplicably. The symbiote in the glass ball had its soul and consciousness wiped out, and was placed inside as quietly as a puddle of melted asphalt. Isnar, the god of symbionts, also in the North Pole. Chapter 50 Kingpin joins the hand. In the next few days, the pace suddenly slowed down. The 5 shacks suspended their nighttime activities. They either went to various restaurants to eat and drink and spend stolen money every day, or they danced and sang to experience the prosperity of the human world. Ethan's schedule was also very fixed, except for some special days when he needed to attend on behalf of Yuri. Outside the board of directors of Stoke Industries, he was still hiding behind the counter on the first floor studying and reading as usual. Yuri also lived a very fulfilling life. In order to realize the mass production of steam armor, he spent several days working and finally designed a qualified production line. Although the speed of one set in 2 days is not very fast, it is better than can move on its own. Tony's penthouse mansion suffered a devastating blow, and he had to put the birthplace of new elements in the beach villa. Whenever Yuri asked about the progress, he always said soon, soon, it's true makes people anxious. Just when everyone thought they could safely prepare to go to the North Pole to search for and rescue fellow mutants, Daredevil knocked on the door of the handicraft shop covered in blood. The strong and inhuman Kingpin, the 5 Asians who call themselves Fingers, the bulletproof Bullseye, and the island nation's ninjas who are everywhere and can't kill them all. Vanax stretched out 4 fingers and shook them, and said with an arrogant look on his face, "So many things popped up as soon as we left, Matthew, it seems that the peace and security of Hell's Kitchen still depends on the 5 of us." Daredevil had long known what kind of temperament she had, so he didn't care at all when he heard this. Instead, he followed her words and flattered her, yes, yes, you must know that the current harmony in Hell's Kitchen is the result of the 5 of you working hard every night. You don't want it to be destroyed again and restored to its original state." But unlike what he expected, Vanax did not agree immediately. Instead, he hesitated and said perfunctorily, "Are you in a hurry? How about? Do you know where their lair is?" Yuri interrupted Vanax. He looked at Daredevil, then at the 5 fellow mutants around him and said, "We are going on a long trip these days, and we may not be able to come back for a long time. If you knowing where their lair is, my plan is to eliminate them once and for all, preferably tonight." He didn't want to cause trouble. After all, whether they are endless ninjas or powerful kingpins, they can be injured by Daredevil. At best, they are ordinary people who have mastered extraordinary abilities, but 5 Fingers it reminded him of Kunlun, a hidden sect similar to Karmitage, and its sacred object Dragon Bone seemed to be buried somewhere underground in New York. If nothing else, the Kingpin should have reached some deal with the Hand. The Hand would send ninjas to help the Kingpin eliminate the enemies and stabilize the position of the Underground Emperor, while the Kingpin would provide them with shelter and assist in excavation to extend the time. Longevity, slowing down aging. Legend has it that the core of Kunlun is a golden egg who calls himself Xiao Lao, and it is he who supports the existence of the entire Kunlun plain. Although we don't know what the connection is between the Dragon Bone and Xiao Lao, and we don't know why the Dragon Bone appears in New York underground, but this does not affect Yuri's desire to take the Dragon Bone as his own, because he feels that he can get something from the Dragon Bone that can enhance his strength. Such as opening up a plane, such as resurrecting the dead. But New York is very big and the keel is very small. If you want to find it, the best way is to get the answer from the top brass of the Hand. They have been planning this for an unknown amount of time in order to live forever. Since they have come to New York, it means that they have at least mastered the search. Keel method. It's at the Wilson Properties building in Kingpin. Daredevil saw that things were turning around. After relaxing, he finally realized how seriously injured he was. There were no less than 20 stab wounds all over his body, as well as broken bones and shocked internal organs. Severe pain swept over him like a tide, and the feeling of weakness from excessive blood loss also spread throughout his body at the same time. Pressing the button, the short stick in his hand extended. He put all the weight of his body on the long red and white stick called the weapon, which was actually a blind stick. He held on to prevent himself from falling. "I can take you there. I can't worry about your condition." Yuri turned his hands to condense a ball of life energy and sent it into Matthew's body. The latter's wounds healed quickly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the blood lost halfway was quickly replenished. A good man will do his best. Yuri controlled the life energy to converge on Matthew's eyes, easily repairing his eyes that were blind due to nerve damage. "Oh! Oh! Oh, I bought it!" Before Matthew could sigh for the rapid recovery of his injuries, the colors that appeared in his life again took away all the words he could express. In a moment of excitement, he actually stretched out his hand to the person he first saw. Seeing Yuri, it seemed that he wanted to touch and verify whether he had really recovered his eyesight. Snapped. Yuri opened his hand decisively and beckoned the 5 shacks to go to the 3rd floor to get their equipment. He patted Matthew on the shoulder, and the latter thanked him with tears in his eyes. "Get used to it and don't affect the next battle." 3rd floor. Vanax was chirping and looking forward to the new equipment with the other 4 people. Recently, the boss was either designing the steam armor production line in the studio or tinkering with the black slime in the glass ball on the workbench. The former was for making money in the future, while the latter was for the new equipment they prepared. "Will we also wear a full set of armor like the Eternals? I don't like the look of their armor." While everyone was discussing, Yuri came belatedly and handed 5 glass balls filled with black slime to the 5 shacks one by one. "This is the new equipment I prepared for you. It is simple, easy to control, and can be changed in many ways. Chien, there is no need to consume energy, no need to worry about damage, it can withstand huge physical and magical damage, and can greatly enhance the user's strength in all aspects." Amidst the sudden rapid breathing of the 5 people, Yuri's whole body was covered with gushes of liquid. His 5 eyes suddenly opened. And a familiar and unfamiliar voice came from the ferocious mouth that opened and closed. "I will give it to you. It's called Symbiotic Reproductive Suit. Now, crush the glass ball in your hands, absorb the black slime inside, and give it any command like controlling a limb, and enjoy the surge of power." Roar! 5 deafening sounds exploded on the 3rd floor. Vanax controlled the symbiote to form a ferocious giant bird, while Kate transformed into a huge hairless evil cat. Tiger, Chat, and Tiger all showed their unique abilities. The mutant race's true form, 5 huge black monsters, instantly filled the not-so-small space on the 3rd floor. Vanax takes Daredevil to the sky to show us the way. Everyone else should keep silent and keep a low profile before arriving at the enemy's lair to minimize exposure. After Yuri gave the order, he turned over and rode Vanax. The ceiling on the third floor opened quietly, and the blue light flashed away. Chapter 51 The Death of Jin Bing. The top floor of the Wilson Properties building. In the huge private office, Kingpin's strong and bloated body was almost completely hidden behind the desk. Opposite him, 4 middle-aged people with different expressions were lying lazily on the sofa. Except for Alexandra, who stayed at the hand headquarters in the island country, Mrs. Gao, Batu, Saonda, and Murakami all came to New York. If the enemy you are talking about is the low-level character who used the telescopic stick just now, with all due respect, he is not even qualified to let me do it. Mrs. Gao flicked the ashes of her cigarette, took a deep breath and exhaled the smoke. Or is it that the underground emperor of the United States is so weak that he can't even deal with such a small character? Han han han! Jin Bin's sneer was powerful and deep. He turned the computer on the table to the sofa, where a video that looked like surveillance was playing. I saw the wall on the screen being smashed by a hand. The open 5 fingers accurately grabbed the face of a gun-wielding gang member who was full of panic and could not react. Then the 5 fingers exerted force, and the round head exploded like a watermelon. The remaining people in the room raised their guns and fired at the hole in the wall, but the latter quickly retracted their arms and none of the bullets hit the target. Just as everyone was pouring firepower into the hole in the wall to vent their fear, the only wooden door in the room was kicked open, and then Daredevil rushed in with 2 rifles, sweeping everyone to the ground. 5 hooded people walked into the room after Daredevil. It was easy to tell from their figures that they should be 3 men and 2 women. After one of the women entered the room, she glanced at the camera that was recording. She flicked the gun and fired a bullet, and the picture on the computer instantly fell into darkness. After the video was played, Kingpin turned the computer back to him. His eyes met with Madame Gao's and the 4 others one by one, and then he slowly said, "This is the only one I can find about the other 5 enemies besides Daredevil. Video. The other party is very cautious. They can always detect and destroy any camera that is turned on. Regarding their true strength, I have many death cases of gang members here. Do you want to see it? It's useless." Batu straightened up from the sofa and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of his private office, overlooking the brightly lit New York City. A masked and tight-fitting man who can only dance with a stick is said by your men to be a demon that haunts the night. An enemy who doesn't even dare to confront a bullet makes you tremble and cower in this building without showing your head. Jin Bin. Batu turned around to face the burly man behind the desk. His tone was full of provocation. Are you as bad as the recent rumors? Boom. Crack. The heavy metal cane slammed into the floor, and countless cracks spread in all directions like lightning. Kingpin slowly stood up from the specially made load-bearing transfer, and his huge body exuded a strong sense of oppression. Batu. Don't challenge my majesty again. You can just be reborn. It's not that it can't be killed. The atmosphere in the office suddenly became tense. The 4 leaders of the hand stood together in tacit understanding, staring closely at the underground Emperor Kingpin, who looked extremely angry with his 8 eyes. And many more. Murakami suddenly stared at the floor-to-ceiling window behind Kingpin, and he seemed to see something flash past. How stupid do you have to be to play a trick on me that even a 3-year-old wouldn't fall for? Jin Bing looked at the 4 people who were facing a formidable enemy, with a disdainful smile on the corner of his mouth. Although the opposite side pretended to be very similar, it was impossible for this level of level A to deceive him anyway. Fisk. Mrs. Gao pulled out the 2 daggers from her lower back, and formed an offensive and defensive formation with the other 3 people. She stared closely at the dark window and advised in an extremely serious tone, "If I were you, should put down that damn little awkwardness just now, and then turn your head and stare at the back." Boom. Yuri doesn't understand why people who own a building like to set up their territory on the top floor. Do they think the enemy will only climb up from the bottom up? Just like him now, riding Vanax directly to the top floor, and shooting down with an energy cannon that has been charged for 10 seconds, what kind of ceiling can't I blast through? Daredevil. It can only be said that Yuri's choice of explosion point was too clever. Daredevil, who jumped into Kingpin's private office at the lead, was impartial and fell right in the middle of the confrontation between the 2 parties. Matthew was hung in the air for 10 minutes and was blown by the cold wind. It was such an exciting scene when he came down. Fortunately, his teammates behind him were very powerful. Before he could press the telescopic mechanism of the short stick, Yu returned to the normal symbiote form. Ri and Vanax jumped down. "I want that old woman." Vanax took the lead in selecting the target, and then Daredevil waved his short stick and rushed straight towards Kingpin, who also raised his metal cane without saying a word. The mud monster! Suo-Onda raised his fists, and a pale golden light gradually shone on his skin. He glanced at Daredevil, who was fighting Kingpin back and forth, and aimed his two fists at you from a distance of 3 or 4 meters. Lee and Van X went to fight. Shall you die? The two energy bodies that vaguely looked like fists were shattered in midair by 2 energy bullets fired from Van X's fingertips before they were even 1 meter away from the two of them. The same golden energy. The fireworks that bloomed in the air after the collision were dazzling, but in the eyes of the 4 members of the Hand, this was clearly a prelude to death. Not only does the opponent also have the ability to launch energy attacks, but the energy bombs launched are not only very powerful, but also countless times faster than himself. The 4 of them looked at each other and immediately decided to turn around and run away. Boom! A huge hammer broke through the door, and then a huge monster that looked like an upright evil tiger came in carrying a black sledgehammer connected to its arm. Until this moment, Jin Bin's personal the deafening shouts of murder outside the office reached the ears of the 4 members of the Hand Club. Devils! They are the demons of hell! My lord! Help me! No! There is no doubt that this is a crushing and massacre of a few against the majority. Dear sir! Murakami, one of the 4, directly put the tachi in his hand back into its sheath. He bowed deeply to Yuri, who looked the calmest so far, and said, if you can show your noble hand, the Hand will have nothing to do with Jinpin from now on. Fukiwara families. Kingpin punched away Daredevil, who was scurrying around like a mouse, and punched the latter's stomach with his metal cane. A crackling high-voltage electricity quickly filled Daredevil's body, and for a short time, in just a few seconds, he was lying on the ground twitching. Kingpin walked toward Yuri menacingly, holding his cane. The fragile floor shattered like glass under the feet of the Underworld Emperor, who weighed more than 300 kilograms of muscle. Yuri waved her hand, and Van X immediately struck out. A slender spike pierced Kingpin's shiny head with her fist. Before the other party had time to react, the black spike shortened instantly. He took it back, and Jin Bing fell to the ground with a bloody hole as thick as a finger on his forehead. How can there be any gold tie? Yuri approached the 4 members of the Hand slowly, his 5 eyes turned strangely white, and a nightmare-like voice sounded in the latter's ear, tell me, where is the keel? Chapter 52 Speculations on Symbiotes. So, what are we going to do? Yuri and the other 6 threw Daredevil onto the street of Hell's Kitchen and ignored it. Anyway, the place was as clean as heaven now. Except for being a little empty, the house was truly kept open at night and no items were picked up on the road. After a humanized and harmonious interrogation, Yuri found something similar to a compass from Batu. According to Mrs. Gao, there was a small piece of dragon bone inside. After being blessed by the formation, he could sense the same source of energy within a radius of 500 meters. Energy, that is to say, as long as the keel is not buried too deep, he can find the location of the keel just by walking around New York with a compass. I originally planned to search for it after returning from the North Pole, but unexpectedly, as soon as I walked into the commercial street where my ancestral handicraft shop was located, this thing lit up with a pale golden light. After testing several locations nearby with a compass, he found that the locations that would cause the compass to react could be connected to form an arc with a radius of 500 meters, and the center of the circle was the old Rogers bookstore next door to the handicraft shop. It took a lot of time to clean up the mess in the Wilson Real Estate building. Although the sun has not yet been seen, the sky is still getting brighter. Yuri put away the compass. He opened the ceiling of the 3rd floor and returned to the 3rd floor with a group of mutants. After pondering for a moment, he said, the dragon bone is beside us. It is definitely impossible not to take it. In this way, after Ethan goes to work, I will ask him to find out what old Rogers has to say. If the other party is willing to sell the bookstore, we will dig directly from the bookstore. If not, then we will dig down from the small store. Anyway, they are not far apart. Far away, with your abilities and mine, there is almost no difference. No one had any objections to this. While Yuri was building the excavation tools, they gathered on the 2nd floor and began to discuss the symbiotic reproductive suit inside the body. For them, the dragon bones buried underground have no meaning at all. Even if they find them, they can only make dragon bone soup at most, but the symbiotic reproductive equipment is amazing. It can directly increase their strength. How to maximize the use of this equipment is a topic of great interest to them. It is worth mentioning that after Yuri erased the soul and consciousness of the symbiote, its weakness and fear of high temperatures and sound also disappeared. Yuri's speculation about this situation is that the soul of the symbiote was born from the Black Death Sword, but the body was created by the Celestials and Nar. The soul of the symbiote, which is in the same line as the Black Death Sword, inherited the former fear of heat and sound, but the acquired body itself does not have such weaknesses. After a series of operations by the Celestials and Nar, the soul and body of the symbiote were combined together without distinguishing between you and me. As we all know, the body is controlled by the soul. The symbiote combines with the host and changes in countless ways. All kinds of actions are executed by the soul. After the soul is unable to express its will due to fear, the symbiote's body will gradually return to its original form, a pool of non-Newtonian fluid the size of a fist. After Yuri erased the soul consciousness of the symbiote, he found that only after he made physical contact with it, it would integrate into his body as a conditioned reflex. After that, as long as he did not give orders, the symbiote would not do anything. Any reaction, on the contrary, as long as the host itself gives an order, the symbiote can respond immediately. But the actual operation is not as simple as it seems. First of all, you must have the mental power to invade the will of others. Secondly, you must have the ability to find all the souls combined with the body. Thirdly, you must have the means to obliterate the soul and the remaining will. Finally, you must ensure that during the erasure process it will not harm the symbiote body that is integrated with the soul. All in all, it's hard. After a while, Yuri made all the equipment that might be used later. There are no shovels, hammers, and other digging tools. These things are easy to wear and tear. Unless he wraps a layer of magic circle on the outside, he will not be able to dig very deep. Isn't the symbiotic reproductive suit better than these things? Most of what he made were devices for fixing excavation passages. The keel was buried underground at an unknown location. If there was no way to fix the passage, it would be buried underground by the collapsing mudstone layer before digging very deep. Death would be certain. He couldn't die, but he had suffered enough from the painful feeling of being buried underground from the moment he woke up. The discussion on the second floor was still very enthusiastic. Yuri thought not to disturb it for a while, sealed the entire third floor and took out the symbiote that had been peeled off from the little spider a few days ago. The symbiont can not only improve the host's genes and enhance the host's strength, but after merging with the host for a period of time, it can even copy all the host's abilities. This symbiote parasitized on the little spider for 2 or 3 days, and even once occupied the magpie's nest, seizing control of Peter's extraordinary body. With such a deep integration, it is thought that even if the little spider had not possessed extraordinary abilities, copy it several times, at least 7 or 8 times. Yuri doesn't like super strength and super agility, but he is very interested in spider sense and electrostatic adsorption. The former can avoid all dangers like a bug, while the latter, although it looks weak, is actually made of flesh and blood. A type that controls electromagnetic force. If it can continue to be developed, it might be able to take off on the spot, and even flip the Earth's magnetic field as easily as Magneto in the X-Men. Whether you can do it or not is one thing, but if you can't even think about it, then you definitely can't do it. Crushing the container, the jet-black liquid seeped into Yuri's palm. Within a few breaths, a black and white spider suit covered Yuri. He gently raised his hand to reveal his wrist, and a finger-thick spider silk was like it shot out like a sharp sword. Withdrawing the spider silk, he jumped lightly, flipped half a circle in the air deftly, and firmly attached to the ceiling of the third floor. At this moment, the original gravity of the Earth seemed to be reversed. He released his hands and he stood head first on the ceiling as if standing up from the ground. Listen to influx. With a thought, the adsorption force on the soles of his feet disappeared, and he turned over in the air very naturally, landing firmly on the soles of his feet and standing at the place where he had just jumped. We have super strength, super agility, and electrostatic adsorption, but what about spider sense? While controlling the symbiote to integrate Peter's extraordinary genes into his own body, Yuri opened the seal on the third floor and shouted to the second floor, Vanax. Go upstairs. If the symbiote really copied the spider sense, just find someone to test it. On the second floor, Vanax was happily discussing the wonderful applications of symbionts with his compatriots. He was stunned for a moment after hearing Yuri's voice, and accidentally saw the dawn outside the window. Suddenly a confusing blush flew over his face. She touched Kate, who was sitting next to her with a cold face and taking notes in a small book, and said with a little pride in her excitement, "The boss is looking for me, he must want to mate. How about it, do you want to come together?" Chapter 53 Excavation. Vanax, I order you to hit me now. Yuri was wearing a black and white spider suit, and the close-fitting symbiote showed off his perfect figure. He blinked a few times with two pure white drop-shaped eye patches. He looked at the stunned Vanax who was motionless and urged, "Quick, do it." Vanax lay on Yuri's chest, and touched his solid and powerful chest muscles with a finger as white as jade. "I think if you want to play this trick, Kate will be very happy. He told me secretly. Unlike me, I will only be obedient." "What are you talking about?" Yuri frowned, and with a wave of his hand, he knocked Vanax to the ground, who was obviously already in puberty. "I just want you to spar with me, where did you think you were?" After sternly reprimanding the stupid bird who had a problem with his brain, the two finally entered the normal plot. Yuri closed his eyes, shut down his 6 senses and 5 senses, and completely relaxed his perception of the surrounding environment. In the dark, he seemed to have grown a 6th eye, and his special perspective clearly reflected a rapid punch to the throat. SHH. Yuri crouched down to avoid Vanax's fist, and the next moment he opened his eyes. Fu Ling kicked the ground and flipped in the air, avoiding a spiked whip drawn from behind. "Enough, Vanax." 3 sharp chain thorns stopped suddenly at Yuri's eyebrows, heart, and genitals. The black and white spider suit was retracted from the body in the blink of an eye, and the 6th perspective disappeared in an instant. Vanax retracted the 3 chain thorns formed by the symbiote without hesitation, and jumped to save Yuri's arm and asked with a smile. "How's it going, boss? Am I stronger than before?" "It seems so." Yuri rubbed Silly Bird's head lovingly, then continued with a smile, "But now I can close my eyes and dodge attacks that I had to open my eyes to dodge before. If you look at it this way, you seem to be better than before." "Weaker. I'm sick. As the saying goes, everyone has to die, and goods have to be thrown away when comparing goods. The 5 shacks have indeed become a lot stronger since they woke up, but as the leader of the mutant tribe, Yuri has become even stronger. Not only was he the first to awaken to wisdom, but he also learned to make simple technological and magical tools. He could run 4.5 meters long, heal anyone's injuries, rub energy bombs with his hands, and summon symbionts to reproduce. Pretend, the magical world is waving to him enthusiastically, and Kunlun's holy relic dragon bone has now been stripped off and standing in front of Yuri. If the 5 current shacks can rival 10 of his past selves, then the current Yuri can easily kill 100 of his past selves. "Don't worry about it, silly bird." Yuri pinched Vanax's swollen face and kissed her softly on her lips, which were as warm as agate. Looking at her obviously disappointed look, Yuri thought for a while and comforted, I'm getting stronger, but I got stronger too fast, and in comparison it seems like you are weaker." "It's a matter of course, Vanax, after all, I am the only leader of the group. No one can catch up with the speed of my evolution." "What did he say?" Yuri looked at Ethan with a regretful face, and he knew the answer without him saying it. Sure enough, Ethan spread his hands and said, "I told old Rogers that we could buy his bookstore at a very high price, but he said it was a breakup gift from a very important person, and he would buy it no matter what. The bookstore won't be sold. Let it go." Yuri stood up from the chair, waved his hands and melted some metal objects on the shelf into a notice board with the words "Our store is under renovation, temporarily closed." Shaq carried it to the door of the store and put it down. The shopkeepers of several shops opposite saw it and gathered together to discuss. "I don't think it can be driven anymore, so I'm ready to transfer it." "What a great location and location. I can open a funeral store better than him." "That's right, look how long it's been since he got that name. Have you seen anyone go in?" Old Rogers, who had just rejected Ethan, slowly approached Yuri's handicraft shop. He looked up at the arrogant sign and raised his hand to knock gently on the glass door. After Shaq came in, Yuri completely sealed the entire shop to prevent the noise caused by digging holes from being heard by pedestrians walking on the street. Old Rogers put his face close to the handmade glass door. There was no one inside, but the vibrations he felt on the soles of his feet were real, one after another, as if someone was digging the ground with a pile driver equipped with a silencer. Just as he was about to knock on the door to ask again, he felt an invisible wave sweep across his brain. His consciousness, which was as strong as gold and stone, was in a trance for a while and then returned to normal. Old Rogers, who was not affected by the effect of expulsion magic at all, narrowed his eyes inexplicably and suddenly sharpened. "Eyes, oh, young master of the Ambrosius family, I know you are not simple." At this moment, the first floor of the handicraft shop was indeed empty. Even Ethan was wearing what Yuri called professional attire, the symbiotic reproductive suit. On the first day he mastered the extraordinary power, he was forced into the black-hearted boss by the black-hearted boss. In the pitch-black tunnel, he became an excellent humanoid excavator. The 7 people were very fast. They dug down 1 or 2 meters and stuffed a magic rune stone the size of a bottle cap into the passage. The magic engraved on the back could maintain the stability of the passage for a long time to prevent collapse. The runes engraved on the front, this ensures air circulation and provides a certain light source. The underground soil in New York City is extremely rich in content, not to mention soil and various stones. Kate actually dug out a crushed coffin 34 meters underground, and the corpse inside had long been eaten by microorganisms in the soil. Only one skeleton remained, and it was almost indistinguishable from the stone coffin fragments scattered around. As the excavation depth increased, the compass found on Bato became brighter and brighter, and Yuri could clearly feel the restlessness of one of the parts, presumably it should be the so-called few keel fragments by the 4 members of the hand. According to the pointer, the 7 people continued to fine-tune the digging direction. Half an hour later, Shaq and Chet shouted at the same time, "We can't dig anymore. Something is blocking the shovel transformed by the symbiote." Everyone dug up all the soil they could, revealing a huge golden ball under their feet that was crystal clear and looked like glass. This cover seemed to be broken at the touch of a touch, but it was unexpectedly strong and abnormal. After Shaq combined with the symbiote, he was so powerful that he sank. A blow to the big foot did not shake the cover at all, but the reaction force made the thigh numb. Worried that a more violent impact would collapse and destroy the tunnel that everyone had finally dug, Yuri stopped Shaq, who was shouting about a stronger attack. He squatted down, and a golden keel more than a kilometer long was quietly suspended in the transparent cover. Its head was connected to each other, and its whole body exuded a bright but not dazzling golden light. At this moment, the compass in Yuri's hand suddenly glowed with golden light. The transparent cover illuminated by this golden light seemed to activate certain functions. An unparalleled suction force acted on Yuri, who stood up in time. Before he could hold Kate's deep hand, she was sucked into the transparent cover with a squeak sound. Chapter 54 Yuri Ambrosius. It was like falling into a void universe without gravity. The huge suction force disappeared the moment Yuri entered the transparent cover. He held the compass in his hand tightly and let it float slowly with him toward the huge coiled keel. In order to save the boss, the 6 people outside the cover continued to launch rapid attacks on their feet. Yuri noticed something strange behind him and quickly waved to express that he was safe now. The golden light emitted by the keel shone on his body, making him feel warm and comfortable. As the distance got closer, this warmth even acted on his own soul. He could feel the soul gradually getting stronger. The speed he used mental energy trains oneself more than 1,000 times. Closer, closer. Yuri passed through the golden light mist that looked like substance, and firmly hugged a golden finger bone with the traction of the compass. The compass trembled violently, and an obvious bulge appeared on the surface. A golden bone the size of a fingernail broke out of the plate in the next moment, and was firmly attached to an imperceptible damage at the front of the phalange. A dense golden light suddenly lit up, and golden bone gradually grew between the bone and the damaged part, binding them tightly together, and in the blink of an eye, the damaged part returned to its original state. Yuri summoned the symbiote spider suit and attached himself firmly to the smooth jade-like keel. He gave it a few tentative beatings. Based on experience, he believed that the keel was much harder than imagined. I wonder how the hand's dragon bone was removed. The dragon bones coiled together look like a puddle of golden ice cream, and the location of the 2 dragon heads is exactly the center of the ice cream. Yuri walked on the smooth bone surface and soon came to the front of the dragon's head. The dragon's head was huge, and the empty eye sockets alone were as big as the head of a truck. Just when Yuri was about to literally kick his nose into the face, the entire keel under his feet vibrated slightly. The golden light on the dragon's bones dimmed quickly, and they converged into a surging river of light, spiraling up along the winding bone seams, and finally gathered in the 2 empty eye sockets on the dragon's head. The spider sense warned wildly, and from the mysterious 6th perspective, a huge dragon head that seemed to burst the world of the film slowly opened its eyes. The temperature emitted by the golden dragon soul fire is terrifying. Even though the symbiote is no longer afraid of high temperatures, at this temperature, it still has a tendency to melt like ice cream baked by high temperatures. Thanks to the symbiote's blocking of the dragon soul fire, Yuri felt as comfortable as soaking in a hot spring at the moment. He could clearly feel that his soul was eagerly absorbing this pure energy. In just a few breaths, in a short time, the weak soul has more than doubled in strength. Before Yuri could experience it too much, a huge mountain-like consciousness suddenly rushed into his soul. All the protection and attack methods he had arranged before were destroyed in an instant, and the spiritual power that could easily control the will of thousands of people. The force facing this consciousness is like a firefly rushing towards the bright moon. Inheritor, the test has begun. A bell-like voice exploded in Yuri's mind. After many attempts to exorcise it to no avail, he could only accept the reality that a dragon soul was stuffed into his soul. What is an inheritor? What is the test? The huge dragon soul in his soul seemed to be a fixed program. Faced with Yuri's question, he didn't pay any attention to it and just continued on his own. The first test, soul refining. No. Yuri looked at the golden flames that suddenly spread from the eye sockets of dragon soul, and had some bad premonitions in his heart. He is well aware of the influence of this flame on the soul. When there is no malice, the residual heat can make his soul grow several times in a short period of time, burn this soul into nothingness. Sure enough, the golden dragon soul fire quickly permeated the entire soul space, and an indescribable terrifying pain instantly occupied all of Yuri's senses. Time became extremely slow at this moment. Just a few seconds seemed like tens of thousands of years had passed. The soul and spirit that I was originally proud of were fragile and vulnerable in this golden flame. After a while, it shrank. It has reached 1/10 of the original value. Just when Yuri was about to lose his hold, he suddenly felt a soul breath that did not belong to him appear in the soul space filled with golden flames. A familiar face comes into view. Isn't this the same person you see in the mirror every day? You are an out-and-out demon. Destroy my body. Eat my soul. I am going to kill you. Yuri. He finally realized the origin of this strange soul, the real owner of this appearance, Yuri Ambrosius. The opponent was coming menacingly, but Yuri was not afraid at all. This is just a soul whose body has been killed. Don't forget that this is the soul space of Yuri, the leader of the mutant race. Although he can't move even under the pain and burning of his soul, there are many things for the idealistic soul space. Just think about it and you can do it. Just like now, although Yuri Ambrosius was approaching him with all his strength, in Yuri's soul space, he stayed still forever. The golden flame finally sensed this newly emerged soul. Without any ability to distinguish, it directly poured half of its firepower onto the resentful Yuri Ambrosius. Unexpectedly, the screams did not resound in the next moment, and dense magic runes suddenly emerged from the soul of Yuri Ambrosius. Isolated from the soul body of Yuri Ambrosius. You think this can hurt me? Yuri Ambrosius, who found that he could never get close to Yuri, laughed and gave up any move to get closer. He spread his hands, stood in the blazing fire with an extremely arrogant attitude and said loudly, "Let this flame burn. Go harder. Despicable pretender. Let's see who of us can last longer." Wow! The raging golden flames actually all converged on Yuri Ambrosius, whose smile suddenly solidified. The magical light that protected his soul was like a rock resisting in the flood. It was gradually dimming under the impact of huge waves again and again. Upon seeing this, Yuri immediately returned his consciousness to his true body, and his mutant true form suddenly appeared under the venom suit. Dozens of transmission tubes located on the spine pierced the keel in front of him with fangs and claws. Because the latter gathered all the golden light at the eye socket, it was directly pierced by the transmission tube. Suck, suck, suck. Whatever it is. Suck it for me. He does not believe that the damage to the dragon bone has no impact on the dragon soul at all. He also believes in the body's ability to absorb and utilize the energy of the dragon bone. You are up and down, and there is also the ignorant and fearless Yuri Ambro. Hughes is responsible for bearing all the injuries. He believes that he will be able to survive this damn first test. Right? Chapter 55 Old Rogers. Around the keel inserted by the transmission tube, the golden bone is turning pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the speed is not slow, for the entire dragon body, which is as towering as a mountain when coiled up, it is as if it was lifted from Mount Tai. It's as insignificant as taking away a stone. But for Yuri, this is insignificant but has indeed become an extremely important life-saving straw. Maybe it is the dragon bone that has been transformed by the dragon soul for a long time, or maybe it has such characteristics. The golden energy absorbed by the transmission tube, part of it poured into Yuri's body, causing the cell activity in various parts to be significantly enhanced, while the other part all entered the soul space, lingering gently next to his soul body. Time passed by minute by second, and a 1 meter square white patch appeared on the towering golden keel. The energy contained in it was so pure and huge that I always thought that I could absorb everything. All Yuri had to gradually slow down the speed of absorption. Without him, the body's digestion cannot keep up. At this moment, a horrific scream suddenly sounded in the soul space. Yuri immediately put his consciousness into the soul space, and sent a letter in surprise that the magic shield covering the soul body of Yuri Ambrosius had all disappeared gone. The scorching dragon soul fire rushed towards the frightened Yuri Ambrosius like an evil tiger that finally succeeded in catching its prey after 100 attempts. Without protection, he was now how could a weak ordinary human soul withstand this level of damage? In the blink of an eye, he was burned to death as if he had never appeared before. Having lost its main attack target, dragon soul fire once again aimed at Yuri, who was surrounded by golden energy. The raging fire instantly enveloped all the golden energy connected to it, but the moment the flame came into contact with the golden energy, it as if it had passed some kind of recognition, the sound of wow spread in all directions. Golden energy and dragon soul fire have the same origin. Does it regard me who is wrapped in golden energy as the same kind? It was good to no longer be attacked by the dragon soul fire, but Yuri's brows furrowed deeper. When he transformed into a human, he didn't just absorb the soul of Yuri Ambrosius, there was also another travelers from Earth. Now the former has been completely burned by the dragon soul fire, but why is the latter still missing? How could a side-lying couch allow others to sleep soundly, let alone a traveler who might know everything? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? He tried hard to recall the scene when Yuri Ambrosius' soul body appeared. Under the fire of the dragon soul, he might not have the energy to pay attention to these tiny details, but now he had enough time to concentrate on searching for things he had not noticed before. It feels strange. Before the soul body suddenly appeared, the outer wall of my soul space produced some sensations. The moment this idea came up, a voice of tolerance and regret suddenly sounded, "Hey, I may be the most unpromising time traveler in history. Not only did I fail to seize the body, I even managed to hide it honestly. Being discovered by you. God wants me to die, I have to die." The golden dragon soul fire instantly broke through Yuri's soul space barrier, and roared back to the place after just a few breaths. I don't know what method the time traveler used, but the dragon soul fire that came back only had the original less than 1/10. This group of golden flames converged in front of Yuri into a miniature dragon body that was many times smaller. It spoke again like a rigid procedure: the second test, dragon soul damage, cannot be carried out. The third test, the dragon soul is damaged and cannot be carried out. The fourth test, the dragon soul is damaged and cannot be carried out. The eighth test, the dragon soul is damaged and cannot be carried out. The ninth test, the dragon soul is damaged and cannot be carried out. Under Yuri's strange and abnormal gaze, the mini dragon soul fell silent as if it was down. The echoes of a series of words it just said were still echoing in the soul space. In this way, a dragon soul, a mutant soul, began. Looking at each other in awkward silence. After staring like this for a long time, the mini dragon soul finally turned on and returned to normal. It penetrated into Yuri's soul at an undetectable speed, and the bell-like voice was louder than ever. The test passed, the inheritance begins. Vanax, is the boss really okay? Kate kicked Vanax, who was lying motionless on the ground, and the latter had been keeping this position staring at Yuri on the keel since he was told to stop all offensive actions. I'm not sure. Vanax replied without raising his head. He has been standing in front of the faucet for half a day without moving. Should we try again? Maybe the shield is not as hard as imagined. Tiger exhaled a long breath that was accumulated in his chest and glanced angrily at the two concerned but confused women. He looked up at the winding passage with a slight light coming in, and affirmed very confidently, "It's just a corpse that has been dead for who knows how long. The boss will definitely be fine." Pushing. As if in response to Tiger's words, the transparent light mask under his feet did not change. Instead, a lot of dust fell on the channel above his head. "I gonna go see." Chat raised his head. His sharp gaze seemed to be able to see the target directly through the layers of obstacles. His symbiote bodysuit transformed into sharp claws, and under the powerful force, he rushed up to the top of the passage as if walking on flat ground. "Yuri? Ethan?" An old but powerful voice came to the ears of the 5 people standing on the light mask. Ethan, who had just met each other in the morning, took off the symbiotic reproductive suit covering his head, and his face was full of surprise and dissatisfaction. "Solution, Old Rogers. What's wrong with this world? Why was the other party able to find the passage hidden under the shop? How did he get in with his decrepit body? Are there so many superpowers in this world? Who is special about Hole? What the hell are you doing on a horse? A fierce fighting sound sounded above the head. Surprisingly, Chat, who was strong and wearing a symbiotic reproductive suit, couldn't end the fight in a short time. In the not very spacious passage, the sound of fighting gradually moved down, and Shaq's expression gradually became serious. He often went to the bookstore next door. He had seen the Old Rogers. No matter how he looked at it at the time, he was just an ordinary dying man. Bad old man. But can an ordinary bad old man fight with Chat, who has at least tons of strength with his bare hands? Shaq said that he had never seen such a person in his long combat career. Chapter 56 Captain America. Bang! The Stars and Stripes shield with the red 5-star engraved in the center hit the transparent shield heavily. Old Rogers shrank his body into a ball very skillfully, trying his best to let the vibranium shield absorb the damage caused by the fall. The ordinary material of the old age shirt just now it was damaged a lot in the fight, revealing an old but strong body underneath. The first thing Old Rogers saw when he opened his eyes was a huge keel floating in a transparent cover. Before he could take a closer look, it was tightly tied into a rice dumpling by 7 thick non-Newtonian fluids. Isn't this very strong? Vanax transformed the symbiote's tentacles into sharp cones, and easily cursed in the restraints. The struggling Old Rogers left a scar on her face, and bright red blood slowly seeped out along the wound. She said with disdain. Glancing at Chat, he said, "He's just a slightly stronger ordinary person, but you couldn't subdue him immediately. You do not understand." Chat picked up the shield on the ground and put it on his left hand under Old Rogers' eyes that seemed to be able to breathe out fire. He clenched his right fist and the symbiotic reproductive device transformed into exaggerated muscles on his right arm. Countless the taut filamentous fibers suddenly exerted force, and the moment the punch was punched, a small-scale sonic boom was even produced. When Shaq and the other 5 were surprised to see that Chat's left arm, which was not covered by the symbiote, did not move even half an inch under such a powerful blow. First of all, there is no problem with Chat, but the problem lies in that undamaged shield. This shield can absorb all impacts. Old Rogers used it to block most of my attacks. Chat took off the shield from his left hand and threw it to Tiger, who was the best at close combat among the 5 mutants. We defeated the enemy Old Rogers who wanted to invade the territory. This is the trophy we captured. No comment. Shaq is better at underwater combat, and he is rough-skinned and thick-skinned, so a shield is of little use to him. Kate usually sneaks up from behind and kills with one blow. How can any assassin hold up a shield? Not to mention, with a wave of her wings, she can dodge most attacks, so the shield can only belong to Tiger, who has sharp teeth and claws and is unparalleled in close combat. Wait! I have something to say. With only his head exposed for breathing, Old Rogers watched his beloved shield being tossed around in the hands of other men, not to mention how uncomfortable he felt. When he saw everyone looking at him, he had a look on his face. He said seriously, "Now that you have discovered my hidden strength, children, I will show you my true identity. My name is Steve Rogers. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, USA on July 1918, 7. Just as you think, yes, that is me, the legendary Captain America who died in a plane crash." Old Rogers proudly admitted his identity. After all, he is a character who exists in American history textbooks in the Marvel world. As long as any of the 6 people in front of him have been to kindergarten, they must have heard of the legend of Captain America and may admire them. No, but it will determine whether the opponent will release him and return the shield to him. He is quite confident, right? The 6 people exchanged glances, and in the end, Ethan, who had the deepest relationship with Rogers, said, "I'm from Iraq and Shaq and the others are not Native Americans, so what exactly do you want to express?" Never mind. Kate waved her hand to interrupt Old Rogers. She looked down at Yuri, who was motionless in the transparent cover, and a cold voice came from her very beautiful mouth, "Stop talking nonsense to him, Tiger, knock him out. He saw something he shouldn't have seen, and let him decide what to do with it after the boss comes out." No. Old Rogers looked at the strong man walking towards him while moving his wrist, trying his best to avoid the next punch. Looking at the fists getting bigger and bigger in his field of vision, he wailed, "You can't treat me like this." An old man. Seeing Old Rogers being knocked down by Tiger's punch, Everyone took back the symbiote reproductive suit that restrained him. Chat looked at the crowd and said, "The defense the boss set up in the store has not been broken. He should have come from the bookstore has started to dig down, so you continue to guard here while I go and completely block that passage." Not long after Chat left, Yuri in the transparent cover finally had a new change. A layer of golden light emerged from his body surface, and then Yuri's feet left the keel, and like the latter, he was suspended directly on the into the huge space inside the cover. Countless twisted but inexplicable runes emerged from the towering dragon bones. They seemed to be alive around Yuri, who was suspended directly in front of the dragon's head, lining up to penetrate into his body one by one. "What should we do now?" Vanax looked anxious, but the others were not much better. After finishing his business, Chet jumped down from the passage above his head. After seeing the scene in the hood, he said with a serious face, "The boss asked us to set up the arrangements. The tunnel stabilizing device can no longer hold up, and do you feel that your feet seem to be shaking?" Yuri, shrouded in runes, was like an ignited sun. The golden light blooming on his body made it difficult to open one's eyes. Puffs of wet soil slid down the passage with a swishing sound. As a last resort, everyone had to return to the unstable place and try to strengthen the stability of the passage. "If the boss wasn't still down there, I really thought you were going to abandon me." Because Ethan had not yet fully adapted to his extraordinary abilities, he was left by Shaq and the other 5 to watch the old Rogers in a coma, but he did not notice that a handful of dirt hit the old Rogers on the head, and the latter his eyes calmly opened a small slit. After confirming that only Ethan was left on the cover, old Rogers suddenly raised his hand to pat the dirt off his hair, and raised his hands towards Ethan, who quickly covered his whole body with the symbiote reproductive suit. "Hey, buddy, don't be nervous, I don't want to fight now." He glanced at the bright human-shaped ball of light in the hood, and the dazzling golden light made him squint his eyes. At this moment, the vibrating frequency of the transparent cover under the two people's feet suddenly increased without warning. The experienced old Rogers quickly stabilized his figure, while Ethan, who had just entered the extraordinary realm, slipped and fell directly on the ground. "What's going on now, Ethan?" Old Rogers pulled Ethan up in a friendly manner. He knew that the 5 Shacks had definitely not gone far. With such a commotion, the other party might come back to check soon. To be honest, without the vibranium shield to resist the opponent's attack, he was really unsure about that group of people. "Join if you can't beat it." Old Rogers was prepared to win the trust of Ethan, who seemed to be the most ignorant, in the shortest possible time. Even if he couldn't get any benefits, it would still be good if the other party could pull him out of this bottomless passage before leaving. He has been sleeping under the ice in the Arctic for 70 years, and he does not want to sleep under the ground in New York for another 80 or years. Thinking of this, he, who was always serious, asked jokingly, "Could it be that we encountered a rare earthquake hundreds of meters underground?" What he didn't expect was that Ethan actually said with a serious face, "I'm afraid, it's true." Chapter 57, Go Envy. After the dragon soul entered the body and the inheritance began, Yuri entered a dreamlike world. Here he can only watch and listen. He cannot speak or have any influence. It is like watching an immersive 3D movie. There are many protagonists in this movie, and they all have different shapes and abilities. Dragon, Yuri watched their birth, growth, and death, passively accepting the infusion of countless knowledge. He saw countless dragons wandering in the endless void, taking the hot stars as their food. He saw dragons and phoenixes wrestling together, and the aftermath of the battle made the void tremble and tear apart. He saw countless giant dragons tearing themselves apart. Sacrifice his soul and body, all the power gathered in one, tearing apart the universe while smashing the same majestic phoenix into nothingness. He saw the majestic divine dragons entering the once bustling dragon realm alone, wailing and circling again and again with their scarred dragon bodies. He saw the weakness of the divine dragons, the decline of the dragon realm, and the vastness of the past. The dragon world has shrunk to only enough space for the dragon to move around. He watched a group of yellow people in thick clothes enter the dragon realm with yellow on their backs and shouted Kunlun, and watched them worship the dragon and multiply in Kunlun. He looked at the majestic dragon roaring and separating his own flesh and blood. The former rushed out of Kunlun and buried in the barren land, while the latter stayed in Kunlun to maintain the stability of the small world. Countless runes were running rampant in Yuri's body. Some of them penetrated into the flesh and blood and disappeared, some entered the soul space, but the most penetrated into the seed in his body. The water drop-shaped seeds were like it is slowly inflating like an inflated balloon, with a vague tendency to transform into a sphere. As the inheritance continued, the various superpowers from the Eternals that once flowed on his body were forced to move out of the way under the force of the golden runes, and then were kneaded like dough under the influence of the golden energy. It turned into the same crooked but mysterious golden rune, and penetrated into the seed that had become a round ball. At the same time, outside the transparent cover, the simple stabilizer made by Yuri has completely lost its function. In order to ensure that the passage will not collapse, the 6 shacks are each responsible for 1/6 of the passage, controlling the symbiotic reproductive suit to forcefully push open the soil that is constantly being squeezed into the passage. It's the cover. Even though Old Rogers was experienced, he couldn't stand on the transparent cover that was shaking more and more frequently. He lay on the ground, resisting the nausea caused by the violent shaking in his body, and he felt something. The cover is probably about to fall apart. Shack. I thought your name was Shack. He shouted above his head, I don't know what you guys are planning here, but now there is a very serious problem in front of us. Above our heads is a commercial street with a lot of traffic. You should be well aware of the situation. You can force open a passage, then can you force open an underground space as big as the hood under our feet? Your boss, Yuri Ambrosius, as far as I know, is a kind boy. He would never want to see hundreds or even thousands of casualties caused by himself. There was silence in the passage for a moment. Just when Rogers was about to persuade him again, Shack suddenly emerged from the non-Newtonian fluid beside him. He did not agree with Rogers' last words, but Yuri, keep a low profile. The policy is indeed solid. If, as expected, the transparent cover will definitely break, then a huge hollow space will definitely cause drastic changes in small-scale geology. The soil will follow the laws of nature and fill it up by collapsing downward, and in this way the consequences of coming down are obvious. The pedestrian street above your head will no longer exist. After thinking for a while, Shack asked, what are you going to do? There is no good way. Old Rogers stood up tremblingly while holding on to the wall. He glanced at Yuri, who was as dazzling as the sun in the hood, and said, this is a natural disaster caused by man-made disasters. We can't do anything about the collapse of the ground. The only thing we can do now is minimize casualties as much as possible. He raised his head, his eyes full of seriousness. Let me go up, I have experience in directing the evacuation of crowds. Shack looked at him for a moment, then silently formed a hand to lift Rogers up. As they slowly ascended, the former suddenly asked, what's the specific method? It's simple. Old Rogers was inexplicably confident, I found the police and told them my identity. In this country, no one will reject Captain America. Haha. Shack glanced at the old man, who seemed to have a problem in his mind. Although I don't know why you are so confident, I still want to remind you that the Captain America in people's minds has died in a plane crash, and he was still a human being. Young and handsome boy, with all due respect, if I just let you out on the street, you, a bad old man, will most likely be regarded as a Captain America fanatic who escaped from a mental hospital. Old Rogers' face suddenly fell. He suddenly thought that he had been anonymous for more than 70 years, and no one would know an old Captain America. However, he just did nothing and watched the pedestrian street. Were hundreds of ordinary people brought to sleep in the dirt by the collapsed ground? Shack did not continue, speaking of which, threatening eviction and commanding evacuation should be able to keep ordinary people away from here, right? Old Rogers was confused. He saw a trace of reminiscence on Shack's face, as if he was recalling his glorious days. Just listen to this burly man murmur, if it is to threaten and expel, I think the 5 of us are more experienced than anyone else. What are you going to do? Shack looked at the old Rogers who asked this question and gave a smirk, then suddenly raised his head and shouted to the top of the passage, Tiger, take my place to maintain the passage stability. Don't share too much with Ethan at the top. I have to go to the ground for this kind boy, the boss. Oh Shack. Tiger passed Shack's words to the above people and took over Shack's task. He glanced at the old Rogers who was being held up by his big black hands, and rubbed his index finger and thumb maliciously. Secretly arranging bosses is extremely difficult. Sinful behavior, I can pretend that I didn't hear anything just now, but... Meals and drinks for a week. The corner of Shack's mouth twitched a few times, and he said like a dead pig not afraid of boiling water, this sentence was originally said by this old man, I just repeated it, that's all, you can decide whether it is right or not. Make a deal. Having just got a shield and a week's worth of food for free, Tiger felt that today was simply wonderful, and he took the initiative to welcome every good thing. Out of curiosity, he still asked more, "Can you tell me? What are you going to do on the ground? After all, I want to show my true identity openly and with all my teeth and claws, scare away all the ordinary people on the commercial street." Shaq glanced at Tiger, whose smile suddenly froze, and through the old Rogers, who was holding up his giant hand, at him. "This is to avoid casualties and to keep a low profile for the boss. It is a serious matter." Tiger looked at old Rogers in his hand. He was staring at his right hand with bright eyes. He followed the latter's gaze and suddenly felt that the shield in his hand no longer smelled good at all. Shaq turned into a tentacle monster, and quickly rushed to the top of the passage. And an extremely arrogant voice sounded in the passage, "Go Envy." Chapter 58 Threatening to Expel. Now, although the vibration frequency of the transparent cover is very high, the amplitude is not too large. After being weakened by the mud layer hundreds of meters deep, basically no vibration can be felt on the ground. The commercial street was still full of people coming and going, and no one could realize that a huge disaster that could swallow the lives of hundreds or thousands of people was slowly brewing beneath their feet. Shaq returned to the first floor of the shop from the hole in the ground. He originally planned to show the prototype here, but then he thought, wouldn't this expose some problems in the handicraft shop? "Old Rogers, I can only agree with you a little." Shaq returned to the tunnel again and soon found another passage that had been destroyed by Chat. The shiny black symbiote reproductive suit transformed into a huge threaded awl, which was effortlessly inserted under the control of the owner into the dirt beneath the commercial street. In just a few breaths, Shaq emerged from the first floor of the closed bookstore. Shaking off the non-existent dust on his body, he looked around the quiet bookstore. Through the glass, he happened to see a person. "The young couple who are passionate about you and me are walking on the street hugging each other. Dare to show affection in front of me." The endless grievance and jealousy were like a torpedo thrown into the deep sea. After being ignited, it set off a huge wave in an instant. Shaq's arms slowly extended and drooped, and at the same time, his body began to revert from human form to mutant race. Real body. The tentacles transformed from countless symbiotic reproductive suits completely covered the monster that almost occupied the entire first floor of the bookstore. Its soaring figure burst the fragile floor of the second floor in an instant. The huge noise made pedestrians on the street stop in surprise and look at Old Rogers' bookstore. Through the glass, they could vaguely see what seemed to be a huge black creature inside. Before the brave ones could get closer, they could see it. If you look carefully, you can hear a shocking beast roar coming from the three-story small bookstore. Roar! Except for Yuri's handicraft shop, the windows of all the nearby shops within 100 meters were shattered by the huge sound. A few unlucky guys who were closer to the bookstore suddenly became stunned before they could turn around and run away, and fell to the ground bleeding with blood from their orifices. There was no sound on the ground. This huge roar was not only powerful, but also extremely penetrating. Within a few seconds, almost all humans with normal hearing within a kilometer radius of the bookstore heard this terrifying sound. Shaq roared for at least 10 seconds. He saw that the street was full of people trying to escape. Those who could run wanted to fly away, and those who could walk wanted to crawl. Even if they were frightened and couldn't lift it, the weak cowards also used their last strength to drag themselves away from the bookstore. Seeing this, Shaq broke through the bookstore and jumped onto the street. His terrifying huge body and dangerous and strange black tentacles looked like a world-destroying demon escaping from hell under the sunlight. Shaq unreservedly released his apex predator aura, and at the same time controlled the symbiote reproductive suit to transform into countless tentacles, and rolled up all the ordinary people who were paralyzed on the ground and lost the ability to move. Just picking up corpses and chasing people away, in a short time, Shaq turned into a terrifying monster with 180 black tentacles surging around the body, with a human being tied to the end of each tentacle. In order to achieve a better expulsion effect, when Shaq saw an unoccupied car along the way, he rolled it up with his symbiote tentacles. Regardless of whether it was worth money or not, when he lifted it up, he would smash it with clang, making huge noises, and occasional the flames caused by car explosions greatly increase people's motivation to escape. Each of these New Yorkers who might be out of breath while walking on weekdays has unleashed their human potential. They took off their tight suits and threw away their bags containing cash and mobile phones, they threw away their obstructive wigs and took off their clothes. Lame high heels, no one cares about their image at this moment, they just want to run and escape. Shaq chased for 2,000 meters and looked back to see that he was already outside the scope of the commercial street. Should be enough. Hundreds of black tentacles tied up with the stragglers neatly placed the frightened humans on the ground one by one. In the confused eyes of all the survivors, this terrifying black beast not only did not eat any. How many steps back did a human being take? Countless tentacles gathered together and transformed into two big hands reaching out to the empty shops on both sides of the street. After a loud noise, countless broken bricks and tiles were piled on the street to form a wall that was 3 meters high, blocking out all those who tried to return again. This monster seems to be driving us away. Some smart-minded people quickly saw Shaq's intention, but they couldn't figure out what the latter meant by doing this. Crack! Finally, the first dazzling crack appeared on the indestructible transparent cover. It was like the first domino toppled, but in the blink of an eye, a large area of dense cracks covered the entire transparent cover. Murn! A sound that sounded like a cow but not a cow sounded from inside the cover. Countless white cracks blocked Tiger's sight, but he could still clearly see that the dazzling golden light in the center of the cover seemed to be gradually dimming. Boss, we're almost done. Tiger felt the increasing pressure from the earth, his eyes fixed on the invisible white cracked cover. He now had to bear at least 30 tons of pressure every moment. This pressure came from all directions. And it is still increasing at a terrifying speed. Even if the symbiotic reproductive suit greatly increases his strength, he won't be able to hold on for long. Boss, hurry up. As if he heard the call from his heart, Yuri, who was suspended in front of the dragon head, suddenly opened his eyes. The once dark golden pupils were like fire that was lit again, and the two golden lights were brighter than ever, taking up Yuri's entire eye pupil. Continuous cracking sounds came from all directions, but this did not affect Yuri's good mood at this moment. With a thought, he took back all the mysterious golden runes that had not passively entered the body, and then he spread them out. In the palm of my hand, I saw a small rune with inexplicable meaning suddenly shining. Hum. He slowly opened his mouth, but the sound he made was as low as a cow's moo. The sound waves emitted from his mouth, and under the influence of the runes on his palm, quickly produced some wonderful changes in the surrounding environment, and a burst of invisible fluctuations spontaneously starting from the palm of his hand. He quickly swept across the majestic keel in the cover at a speed far exceeding the speed of light. Boom! As if a piece of the intact space was cut out, the majestic keel instantly disappeared into the nearly scrapped cover after being swept by the waves. Yuri stabilized his body and barely resisted the huge wind pressure behind him. The sound of shattering sounded like thunder, and countless small cracks connected into one large crack, directly splitting the spherical cover into two halves. Yuri did not stop when he saw this. His body suspended in the air automatically rushed out of the cover without any wind, and he rushed out of the cover in an instant and returned. In the passage. Boss. The old Rogers in Tiger's hand saw Yuri, and extended his hand to say hello in a friendly manner, but Yuri just looked at the channel that kept sinking and said, "Let's go." Chapter 59 Old Roger's Spiritual Barrier. In order to minimize the irrationality, Yuri had to smash the 3-story building that he had consolidated one rune after another as soon as he came out. After all, it was a ground collapse accident that could be called a natural disaster. If all the surrounding buildings were all collapsed, but his handicraft shop remained intact. Anyone who was not a fool would associate him with this sudden disaster. To say that I feel distressed, there is actually nothing to feel distressed about. In the hundreds of years that he led the mutant race against the Eternals, Yuri never lived in a certain place for more than a year. It is no exaggeration to say that most places on this planet have left traces of him. Anyway, he would go to the Arctic to search and rescue his compatriots in a few days. He had no intention of leaving a property in the troubled New York. Besides, with his gradually increasing strength and the large number of compatriots who would soon wake up, he could stay in the bustling city. The city center is really not suitable either. Living in isolation will be an inevitable choice, not only for better hiding, but also for the safety of ordinary human lives. From this aspect, Yuri is really a kind child. There was the sound of a helicopter in the distance. After Yuri heard it, he immediately asked everyone to hold hands. After a faint blue light flashed, the group of people appeared directly on the top floor of a high-rise building a few streets away. Congratulations to the boss for your improvement. Except for Old Rogers, everyone, including Ethan, expressed their respect to Yuri. The 5 Shaqs had experienced a multi-person space jump before, but Yuri had only traveled less than 20 times at that time. Mi showed obvious fatigue, and this space jump transported more people and farther distances, but Yuri seemed to be fine, which fully demonstrated that he had made leaps and bounds in this field. Crack. The cement streets paved by humans on the soil appear fragile and small under natural disasters, and those exquisite buildings also clearly show their fragility at this moment. With Yuri's handicraft shop and Old Roger's bookstore as the center, they appear in pieces. The earth collapsed, and the hard reinforced concrete was crushed into dregs like tofu under the pressure of the soil and buried deep in the ground. Dozens of helicopters hovered over the former commercial street, and Yuri could clearly see the frantic looks of the reporters. The ordinary people who were expelled from the commercial street by Shaq's threats were stunned to see what was happening right in front of them. Get rid of all the impossible, even if the rest seems impossible, it is the only possibility. That monster is here to save people? The belated police and troops quickly blocked the scene. Yuri was surprised to see a huge van open, and a 3 to 4 meter tall steel giant jumped from the van to the ground, although it was covered in paint. It had a variety of official US paints and was equipped with a variety of weapons, but Yuri could still tell at a glance that this was the steam armor he sold to the soldier. Tony, he gave in. Although Old Rogers is old, he has sharp ears and eyesight, and there is no problem with a dozen or 12. He looked at the armor on the ruins that looked very much like the Iron Overlord, and a deep frown formed on his already wrinkled face. He lowered his head and muttered softly, "This shouldn't be, this shouldn't be." Yuri glanced at the bookstore owner next door who was mired in self-doubt and retrieved his memory. It was not difficult to deduce that this was Captain America who had completed his 70-year dormant life by returning the Infinity Stones. He hadn't thought about it yet. I don't know how to deal with this official bug, so the safest way is to let him sleep first. He activated his spiritual ability, but this time his eyes were no longer white, a mysterious rune on the barrier of the soul space flickered slightly, and the spiritual energy that was 100 times purer than before spewed towards Old Rogers under Yuri's control and out. Okay. Yuri only felt as if his spiritual energy had hit an extremely hard steel wall. No matter how hard he tried, he could not break through this defense outside the consciousness of Old Rogers and control his soul. Yuri. Old Rogers noticed something strange beyond his consciousness. With some sense, he raised his head and met the frowning Yuri's eyes. The former's expression instantly became serious. He knew what was hidden in his mind. What, if the person in front of him knew about it? He was worried that the perfect ending that the Avengers had sacrificed their lives for decades later would be ruined. In Yuri's perception, the steel wall of Old Rogers' consciousness became harder in an instant, and the torrent of spiritual energy bombarded it again and again, but it could not shake even a bit. I could spend all day with you. Old Rogers stared sharply into Yuri's eyes and subconsciously spoke the most classic lines. Yuri looked at him and smiled slightly. He was indeed a man who could hold on to the mind scepter for 3 seconds before falling to the ground unconscious. This iron will was rare in the world. Although magic can't defeat magic, he still has physical attacks. Hit your brain hard and I won't believe you won't fall. Rogers. Yuri walked towards him with a sunny smile. In the latter's slightly fearful eyes, he teleported directly behind him and hit the old Captain America with a fist on the back of the head. Who had no time to turn his head. Seeing that the other party fell to the ground neatly and fell into coma, he put away his hand and said with a smile, "You can spend a whole day with others because the difference in strength is not big. Without the shield, you can't stand my fist at all. Boss, where will we stay next?" Shaq, who had just vented his emotions, seemed to be in a very good mood. He took the initiative to pick up the Old Rogers who was lying on the ground. Looking at Yuri, whose breath was becoming more and more unpredictable, he said, "You can't carry this old guy all the time." Bar. "How's my house?" Ethan thought about the house he rented on the street, and suddenly felt a little uncertain. If it hadn't been destroyed by the accident, we could live there, although it might be a little crowded. Jingle bell. Yuri took out the vibrating mobile phone from the black ball. Thanks to Fasto's superb scientific research technology, this delicate but fragile man-made product has survived one disaster after another. He looked at the name on the caller ID, he showed his mobile phone in front of everyone, smiled and pressed the button. "Tony, you are here to provide me with temporary housing, right?" Tony on the other end of the phone seemed inexplicably excited. He was sitting on the leather sofa in the seaside villa at the moment, watching the urgent news on the TV with relish. Jarvis thoughtfully projected a before and after comparison of the ruins. The location of Yuri's handicraft shop was also specially marked. Tony drank the red wine in a hearty sip. He held the phone and joked with a wicked smile, "Although it's not very polite, I still hope that this kind of thing can happen to you more often, provided that there are no innocent casualties, just like this time." Has the new element manufacturing equipment been prepared? Normally when Yuri asked this question, Tony would talk to him about it and quickly hang up the phone, but this time he cleared his throat happily, feeling like he was finally able to repay the debt after having owed money for many years. Feeling excited, a calm voice reached Yuri's ears through the mobile phone. Yes, new elements can be created at any time. Chapter 60. This is the future. Although the phone was full of schadenfreude, but in reality, when he saw Yuri and his party coming together, Tony was actually very panicked. After all, some of these people could scare him to the ground with their eyes, and some of them could paralyze him to the ground with their bare hands. His battle armor was torn to shreds, and he could not help himself if he just rolled his eyes. Thinking of this, Tony suddenly felt that he was simply the bravest person in the world. Fortunately, everyone had been digging for a long time, and they were not in the mood to pay attention to him at the moment. After asking about the location of the restaurant, everyone, including Ethan, left. Old Roger's mental will is truly astonishing. In order to prevent him from escaping, Yuri simply put him into a black ball and injected a stream of life energy into his body to maintain the normal operation of various functions of the body. Yuri and Tony were the only two people left in the huge living room at the moment. After confirming that Shaq and the six left, the latter involuntarily let out a sigh of relief and relaxed obviously than before. He glanced at Yuri and looked at he paused for a moment when the other party's golden pupils shone again. So, Yuri, was it you who caused this accident? Not me. Yuri denied it decisively, but then said ambiguously, but it has something to do with me. Tony nodded noncommittally. He could feel that Yuri didn't want to discuss this topic too much. After all, no matter who it was, they would subconsciously find it difficult to talk about it if they destroyed their home. Tony couldn't help but smile when he thought of this. Twitched twice. He picked up the wine glass to cover the raised corners of his mouth, and complained secretly in his heart, he is so shameless, he is your savior who has saved you several times, how can you not help but laugh at him? Are you thirsty, Tony? Of course Yuri saw Tony's uncontrollable smile, but he was not embarrassed at all. After all, besides Hulk, Tony was the best at demolishing homes. I didn't come here to watch you drink. Oh. Oh. Tony put down his wine glass and stood up from the sofa very simply. He waved to Yuri and said as he walked, thank you for the reminder. Then please come with me, Mr. Ambrosius, let's go together. Rise up and witness the birth of a new element. The two walked around the villa and finally came to the underground laboratory under the parking lot. As you can see, it's really not easy to make that new element. Tony took Yuri around the huge ring-shaped electromagnetic accelerator, and carefully introduced the role of each component and the overall effect in detail. To put it simply, we need to use this electromagnetic accelerator to make two known elements collide. If Jarvis's calculations are not wrong, we can get what we want in 15 seconds, but this is not over yet. The element is really stable, but it's still pretty cranky before exporting. See this? A beautiful prism. Tony wore gloves and carefully placed the crystal clear triangular prism where it should be. In the last step, we need this beautiful little thing to introduce the new elements from the collision into my reactor in the form of a laser. Yuri remembered every detail of what Tony said in his mind, and at the same time mobilized his superpowers to build a full-scale model in the soul space for simulation. He scanned all the equipment here as soon as he entered the underground laboratory. So the models used for simulation cannot be said to be little different, they can only be said to be exactly the same. Tony ignored Yuri, who was standing there as if in a daze. He took the instrument and went around the machine to check it carefully. Although the results simulated by Jarvis were realistic and foolproof, there is nothing wrong with being more cautious, right? Well, he didn't want to be slapped in the face at the speed of light after laughing at Yuri. 10 seconds later, Yuri's consciousness returned to reality from the soul space with great satisfaction. He simulated it 3 times, and each time he could safely light up the triangle in the center of the new reactor, and under the influence of magic, he from the beginning of knowing what is happening but not knowing why it is happening, I have become knowing what is happening and knowing why it is happening. Inside the round golden seeds, the magic runes originating from Fastos lit up with light representing evolution. Yuri? Are you okay? After Tony checked the data of the device, he found that Yuri still kept his original movements without moving. His dull expression and flashing golden pupils looked like there was a short circuit in the robot. This made Tony a little worried. If you have any problems, there is no problem in slowing down the production of new elements. I am fine, thank you. Yuri immediately woke up to his current situation when Tony called him like this. He took the initiative to pause the continuous infusion of superpower knowledge, nodded to Tony and said, "Let's start now." Tony shrugged, verbally caring was the best a person like him could do. Since the person involved said it was fine, it was even less likely for him to continue persuading him. He took a deep breath, and he treasured it from the small box. He took out a key, inserted it into the keyhole and turned it hard. A low to high buzzing sound sounded from the entire accelerator. Prism accelerator activated. Jarvis's voice was always so calm and wise. A shallow blue light gradually shone in the bucket-thick accelerator. Tony walked to the annular valve early, ready to turn the valve at any time to refract the laser into the middle of the accelerator. On the reactor. 3, 2, 1, close to the highest energy level. Tony took a deep breath and tried his best to turn the valve, but it didn't work, but compared to the reactor which was still 108,000 miles away, the imprint less than 2 centimeters carved on the wall seemed too trivial. "Yuri! Help me!" In front of Yuri, Tony no longer knew what face was. Seeing that the valve that he couldn't turn with all his strength was easily grasped by Yuri with 3 fingers, he sighed in admiration and secretly envied him. This is a valve. If this is a woman. The blue laser swept across everything in the underground laboratory under the refraction of the prism. Whether it was a heavy test bench or a hard cast steel wall, it left an indelible mark after it passed by. Yuri slowly turned the valve, while secretly feeling the energy characteristics of the new element. This feeling is more real than the simulation of the soul space. "Okay, stop and don't move." Just when the laser hit the core of the triangular reactor, Tony stopped Yuri from turning the valve and endured the dazzling light. After making sure that the reactor core had absorbed enough new elements, he quickly turned off the accelerator. Energy. Buzz. The shining blue light in the core of the triangular reactor gradually converged, and the buzzing sound symbolizing danger gradually weakened and disappeared. Tony and Yuri looked at each other. The former spread his hands and completely forgot about his anxiety when he asked Yuri for help just now. "It's not difficult." After he finished speaking, he automatically ignored Yuri's half-smiling eyes, bent down and got into the big circle surrounded by the accelerator, and lay down on the messy workbench without any scruples, admiring intoxicatedly that he and his father, who had been dead for 20 years, completed the work together. Masterpiece. He casually picked up a pair of pliers and clamped the triangular reactor core into the prepared reactor converter. The crystal blue light shined through the glass shield and hit his tired but extremely excited face. "Yuri." Tony turned around and raised the reactor high, his tone full of confidence and certainty. "This is the future." End of this chapter. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.